Plus Ultra presents The Grey Lodge, the Hyperborean Experiment, Runes of Oblivion. And yes, I did try, and for Solar, was specifically for him, I did try and make a pun with the word runes. So I tried my best, Solar, okay? A roundtable of speculative archaeologies. Of course, I'm Jin the Ninja. I host a show called Threshold Saints. And this is a plus ultra space, so we believe magic is real. It's kind of the foundational premise, you could say, and we try and approach things in a non-dual middle pillar way. That doesn't mean that we don't discuss quote unquote edgelord things. Of course, we also do that. And what else is important? So everything we say is speculative. It's all speculative ideas. This was kind of I was going to say this is dedicated to the truckers because obviously Solar, but obviously Brother Dingbat also, because it is like a coast to coast AM kind of idea, and people seem to keep clamoring for it. Like Matt would suggest something, Solar would say something, and everyone would be like, "Oh, we want to do like coast to coast AM." So I was like, "Okay, everybody deserves it." They, they always. They go along with my crazy ideas, so let's do something that is more collaborative, because that's what the Grey Lodge is really. Fundamentally, it really is. It's not just my project; it's all of yours. So, it wouldn't happen obviously for all my amazing co-hosts and also on Threshold Saints. I think everybody. Joseph has not recorded with me yet, but it is going to happen, and I mean, the show wouldn't be the way it is without the Grey Lodge and all the people that participate and all the people that obviously come to spaces. So know that I am feeling slightly romantic's not the right word, but maybe sweeter than normal. And I'm just going to express my gratitude and my quote unquote love in a strictly platonic way to all of you, and extend that and say thank you so much. And, you know, that's what it's all about, right? Because as I said, in a time of decoherence, like all we have is a couple things, and love is one of those things, and kind of brings us together in a weird, very a time of deep misunderstanding. So of course, so joined by my co-host Solar Exile. Brother Solar has also done an episode on Rejects with Dr. Stephen Flowers, as well as on my show Evela Part 1, which I entitled Doctrine of Awakening, based on the book, because that is obviously the book we discussed. Now, I am very proud of Solar and his episode, and I have obviously name dropped it to everybody as much as I can without being super obnoxious. And so thank you so much, Solar. Obviously, we have Matt Murrah, who is just a star beyond all stars, really, because Matt he came to the spaces, probably wasn't quite sure about me because I was like, you hear things, right? So like I kind of knew I had a volatile reputation. So but Matt stuck through it. He really did, and he is like my true right hand homie, just as Solar is my true left hand homie. And of course, nothing happens without John Monk Dad, aka Monk Dad. We won't call him Dilf Monk this time. But I love John. I think John's great, and I promise I won't either harass or abuse John in any way. Just verbally sometimes as a joke, right, Joe Dan? Obviously, but Joe, no, not Joe, Joseph. Actually, I want to say John is looking for Astro clients. So if you are interested in Astro services, it just says Matt also offers services. So if you are interested in either of the services that either of them provide, please reach out to them and you know help a monk daddy out. Okay. Also, Matt's not a monk daddy. Matt's like I often say he's a twink. So, the magical twink. So we'll say that. So if you want services, please reach out to them. Of course, our scholar in residence, Dr. Joseph Reed, McLuhan Chair of the Grey Lodge. Thank you so much for coming. You found us in the oblivion that is X Spaces, Twitter. Obviously, we all come together, transcend space and time, as we say, to come together in synthesis and also consensus. So, very interesting metapolitical Shout out Brother Solar experiment right off the bat. Mike, who's been a mutual for quite a while and has jumped in occasionally, I think, but definitely, I think he understands what we're doing, and he definitely gets my approach to the timeline. So, regardless if he enjoys it or not, I hope he does. Welcome, Mike, and it's really great to have you. And I hope that this is as I say, this is for the Nagas. This is not about a me space. This is about them talking about, and you, obviously, talking about the crazy ideas you have of the metamyths of America. So, awesome. Of course, my co host, Zachary Shumar from Tracy Twyman, who's also getting a little, Zach and I were speaking in DM today. Tracy is back on the timeline, so that is very cool. And Tracy also got name dropped in my Supernal Triad episode on Rejects yesterday. Because obviously it's very difficult to discuss Kether without referencing some of the more modern ideas of the thinking of it, or at least the kinds of packaging that her ideas have of the tree and et cetera, et cetera. So, Zachary, thank you so much for coming, brother. Appreciate you. My longtime mutual, one of my longest co-hosts on my show, and just a launch member, great dude. Love you, Zach. Thank you so much for coming. Not to be weird, but I do. Zach knows this. I'm very soft, really, despite my sharp tongue, sharp wit, and sharp tongue, and a high IQ, of course. Okay, brother Rom. So we have brother Frater Singapura in the house. Rom obviously came up with our Aetherpunk series. I don't know if it was quite what he expected, but as many of you astutely said, the idea of Aetherpunk was not quite totalitarian tech. It wasn't quite Singapore, and it wasn't supposed to be like the longhouse of lunar punk either. It was a synthesis of the two, kind of liberatory, maybe Setian, you could say, liberatory, at least a neo-Gnostic kind of liberatory version of that, a kind of meta magical rebuttal to sort of the just bring Solar up. Sorry about that. Okay. Was a meta magical rebuttal to the ideas of all of those two things, and then also cyberpunk. So very cool, Rom. Thank you so much for coming. Obviously, you're part of the spaces. If you want to come up and share your normie maxing as of like 6 p.m. EST. Yeah, we're not going to engage any nutcases today anymore. It was a little much, but it's not your fault. It was my fault because I engaged her. So I'm as usual, the monkey is the instigator. But also, also I want to say good job, guys, and then obviously I'll intro Mookie, of course. Sorry, Mookie, but I want to say that despite our DM from November being leaked, you guys did a really great job of like not letting it phase you, and also, I mean, maybe it phased you personally, but I think it didn't show us in any bad capacity. So nothing of what we said was untoward, and I agree with what John said. It was very moderated. So good job on that, and not letting that that low Shudra behavior affect us. Okay, so Bull Brave Free. Okay, so I have to do Mookie first, but I'm gonna do Mookie, but I'll transition it into Bull Brave Free right after. So Mookie, Crowface Yogini, thank you so much for coming, mother of the birds, as we say. Appreciate you very much, and thank you for transcending time and space and being here in this this app that is both the X and the 11 recorded live on our black cube matrix, sending it out into the aether wave, and so we'll see what happens. Thank you so much. Bull Brave Free, lodge member since day one, coming to the spaces since day one. What can we say? Because it happens with all of you. Like, that's what the spaces are. It's not, I could just record myself, or I could do whatever, right? But it's with all of you. It's in perception, which is perhaps one of the most important Kabbalistic ideas. So it means a huge amount that Avi comes to me personally. So let me say that. And thank you so much for coming, Avi. And hope you, obviously, I hope you enjoy every space, but particularly, I think the boys are ready to have me shut the fuck up, and they can just do coast to coast wild man style, and that's okay. I'm totally okay with that. I'll obviously offer commentary, but a color commentary, but I'll try and stay out of their way. Aqua Vitae. I don't know if you're an alt of Joshua's or not, or just a friend, or just fellow anon in this place that we call the wildlands of Twitter, the Outlands. But appreciate you for coming. Thank you so much, and awesome. A great mutual, regardless. So, and we'll also shout out Shakti because I know I set them a little early for her, and she tries to come in right when she's off work. So hopefully she'll be able to pop in, and we'll see. But shout out her because she obviously also, like Avi, has been coming since day one. It's obviously not her first language. She pushes through despite my ramblings, despite my Sephardic meanderings, as we call them. And, it's great. It's really been amazing to meet everyone from really across the world and from across, obviously, the new world, Hapaboria. So, and I know I said thank you a million times, but I also say thank you for doing the Hapaboria series, the Aunt of the Daughter, and obviously Aetherpunk with me. And obviously it was also you and the co-host, but I see that now I have to be more inclusive, and I really will strive to be, okay? So I'll let all the boys introduce themselves, starting with Brother Solar. Although next week, Solar, it will be Matt's turn first, simply because his episode's coming out, so... I'm just kidding. I don't really care what order you guys go in. There's no true favorites. You all have like a piece of my, love in that way. Anyways, platonic, obviously. But yes, okay. Solar, please introduce yourself and say whatever you want to say. And if you want to introduce what you want to talk about or not, that's totally okay.
Yeah, no, thank you, Jin, and yeah, thanks everyone for being here and all the other co-hosts. I like that there's these kind of like arbitrary, like slippery, but existent, little points of order right on that. And I'm really looking forward to the episode dropping with Matt. So I'm looking forward to giving up my space at your left hand, so that someone else can, enjoy that sort of honorific, right? That's very cool stuff that the lodge is putting out. Yeah, I'm Solar Exile. Nothing to plug. I'm pretty sure everyone here's, familiar, at least aware of the existence of the Ebla episode that dropped last week before, on the pod. And we're cooking up some other things, that'll be in the can, for their own time. But yeah, happy to be here. I do have some like preliminary remarks before I sort of recede into the background of the space, but I'd rather let everyone introduce themselves and then maybe like get on stack. That's cool.
Sure, of course. That's great. Thank you so much, Solar. Okay, Matt, my right hand twink magician, please go ahead.
Come on, bro. Okay, here we go. Matt Mora, nice to have you all here. Yes, I'm the right hand. You can say that for now. Though I'm working on being the middle hand, if that's a thing. Let's see. But anyways, also can shout out the Solar's episode. Was really nice seeing it, listening to it. Solar is a very smart guy, so it's always a good time. And very excited for my episode with Jin coming out as well. I know for sure that will be a blast. And yeah, like Jin also mentioned, to be honest, I'm not super. I don't market super much the services and so on. But if you do end up finding something interesting in my website and want to chat about it, just DMs are always open. So be sure to do it. Matt Moore signing out for a bit because archaeology will be very nice.
Thank you so much, Matt. Appreciate you. Okay, John, do you want to give a little teaser for your episode and also plug your services and yourself?
Dear God, I've got nothing planned. I'm Space Answered. I do a bit of astrology, and all the DILF jokes will, I guess, make sense when the episode comes out. I'm not sure. Thanks, Jim.
They will. I promise they will. I'll cut it really funnily. I'll make sure that there's lots of like what's it called, BL bait for the for all the people that are wondering, are curious about me or whatever. So yeah, that's great. It will. And I'm sorry for teasing you, John. I know and I am. I really am. John is underselling himself. I will say that he is actually one of the best. I would say he's one of the best astrologers that I know personally, And I know he wouldn't say that necessarily, but I think he knows that he recognizes that he's higher talent than a lot of, maybe not of other people, but he recognizes that he has a deep understanding. And I think our private discussions and our public ones have been very fruitful. And I see a lot of what John is looking at. He's looking at the astrology of mutability, almost. I want to call it that anyway. I mean, that maybe John wouldn't describe it as that, but it's how we can understand the stars, not that we are under their agency. We are agential over them. And so I think for astrology, that is a must. And I think that the way John is approaching it is innovative and different than even a lot of the people working in like the quote unquote contemporary occult scene. So thank you so much, John, and appreciate you. Mike, if you want to introduce yourself and give like a little plug anything, you're welcome to.
Can you guys hear me all right?
Yeah, you sound great.
Okay, cool. Because I'm working with one AirPod right now. So my name is Mike. Nice to meet you guys. Jen, thank you for inviting me. I'm new to this part, so it's nice to meet some new people and talk about speculative archaeologies, which I don't really know that much about, but I'm into a lot of different esoteric stuff, and I'll try to add what I can. But in terms of my background, I'm doing a lot of different stuff, and I'm a little bit of an enigma, and I kind of like it that way. And I don't want to go into like too deep of everything that I'm doing, but I'm pretty deep into the esoteric stuff across the board, and then I'm also pretty deep into technologies and with crypto and everything. And I'm trying to combine them in an interesting way. So I'll see what I can add, but really great to be here. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Mike. And you will be able to add something because I think you made a comment on Robert Graham, how he transcends the normie. That is Graham Hancock. And so that will be interesting just as an idea to discuss. I obviously come up with these weird titles, speculative ontologies or speculative archaeologies, to go along with the idea that we are just a speculative space. But really, we're going to talk about any kinds of archaeological or anthropological ideas of the new world that are obviously alternative, conspiracy, quote unquote speculative. So anything that anyone wants to bring, it's all on board. And so with that being said, obviously I'm gonna let Joseph Reed introduce himself. Please, Joseph, introduce yourself.
Thank you, Jin. Thank you, everyone. My name is Joseph Reed. I am a relatively new member of the Grey Lodge. It's all kind of happened very fast. I don't have anything to plug. I have around 2020, I kind of fell into media ecology, studying with Andrew McLuhan, who's Marshall McLuhan's grandson in the McLuhan Institute. So I found that by way of Jung and Terence McKenna. I've lived many different lives, which we can go into at a later date, and I'll contribute what I can. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Joseph. And it's always a pleasure to speak with you and obviously be in synthesis and do this. And, I was going to read some Gnostic prayers, but I don't think I will. I'm feeling a little shy now. But thank you guys all for coming. And, but honestly, it is something that someone, I won't say who, but someone brought it to my attention that perhaps we do kind of need to open and then also close the circle. So maybe keep it in your intention as we're all in synthesis together that, that we are sort of protected maybe by the forces, you could say, maybe the truth. Maybe that's a good way to frame it, the arrow of the truth. As you all know, I really like that Dakini with the bow and arrow, curricula, obviously, from a long series I did, we all did together, Aeon of the Daughters. So we could just say that that arrow cuts through all bullshit. So just keep that in mind, I think. Obviously, Monty, I'll bring him up. Monty is definitely our co-host. I'm just teasing him. He's a great mutual, and he obviously has done 5 episodes. I want to say 5 episodes on my show because he has one in the can right now. So thank you so much, Monty. And you are obviously welcome to plug or introduce yourself in any way you want. And also a bibliomancer. So I just want to shout out bibliomancer. Thank you so much. And for all your feedback. That's so useful for me. I'm a feedback. I like it. Honestly, even if it's a little critical, I mean, tell me privately if it's a little critical because I'll cry privately. But no, I really appreciate all feedback. It's really great, especially the quote. I thought it was like, wow. I was like, actually, Solar will appreciate this because this is exactly what he talks about, and this is what I think about and have a hard time articulating. So I think all in all, it was an excellent sort of way, and I am going to read it. And it was an excellent way to. Maybe that was the quote. Maybe the quote was like, "This is what we're going to." Not maybe the theme of speculative archaeologies, but perhaps in terms of like Epstein. I know that Monty and I discussed this like briefly, and just like what's going on because it's very there's kind of nothing happening and then everything happening. It's kind of both things, and it's very disorienting. I find it disorienting, so I can't imagine how it is for like someone who's I don't know, either really invested or really checked out because I'm kind of neither. I'm just kind of a observer at this point. But I do think it's interesting to make a comment on parapolitics versus metapolitics, and maybe Solar will want to speak on this more. And if he does, that's great. But I do think that the Epstein situation was framed as parapolitics, meaning some kind of like secret occulted thing that was happening that was like behind all the structures of oppression or the state or of capital or of all the things that at least we see or that we know about or that we're aware of. But I actually would frame the Epstein situation as a meta political sort of, I guess you could say, event because I think it is more about financial crimes. And I also think it is also a lot about the ramifications of what could be. I'm not saying the files or the Lolita Express. I don't know. For me, I think that is misdirection. I'm just telling you. This is just me. Maybe I'm looking at it metamagically. I think a lot of that's misdirection. I think that if the deep sort of you could say truth was revealed of like what they were doing, of the money flying around, of what it was funding, of what they were kind of thinking about, of like their kind of plans, and how deep it goes into different governments, hierarchies, and the mythic elite. I think that it would probably, I think it would cause a lot of turmoil in the first world and in the markets. So I think that's. I'm not apologizing for anyone, but that's sort of where I'm coming from. Is I think that we aren't able to even discuss discursively on the timeline because there's been a lot of policing. I think we've all seen this. Yes, Monty, please go ahead. And also, Monty, plug yourself and introduce yourself and and respond to me as well.
Hey everybody, pleasure to be here as always. Sorry I'm late. Ran into a little traffic on my way back. I don't really have anything to plug. Listen to Threshold Saints. I got a couple episodes on there. Jin's the hostess with the mostest, but basically like read the Epstein stuff. Ever since it dropped in 2019, this was like a dirty bomb on the subconscious. It's really kind of disgusting at how it kind of hits like every single nail on the head when it like in terms of its salaciousness. It confirmed it, it's Jewish jet-setting billionaires. It's pedophilia, whatever salacious sexual content, which is like designed to go and like strangle you and like suck the life out of like. There can be no attention because your oxygen flow can only go towards like this one like glaring and like wilting flower. And the way that like the policing over all of this stuff and like yeah, exactly what Jim was saying. This is financial crimes and this is back alley dealings. The political figures are the constables for like the big shadow entities, which is
is basically just metaphysical at this point. I don't want to sound like a reductionist leftist here, but there really is, shadow cabals or whatever, and them engaging in salacious sexual details is, really, it's the same reason why all like the fall guys for any kind of terrorism always have child pornography on their hard drives. It's the reason why, it was in the news for so long. Like it probably the most disgusting and vile crime that you can do is taking advantage of someone who's like too young to understand what's going on, and I just find this like a dirty bomb in the psyche that goes and really just like decimates everything else. I mean, like it's kind of no wonder that like a lot of other stuff like the big beautiful bill just got passed and this and that, and really you just have like I like what you said there about how it's pretends to be parapolitics, disguised, but it's actually like metapolitics. I could be switching those up. I'm sorry, but so much of this really comes down to like these are like back alley dealings of the rich and the famous who like are actually behind everything, and the all of the hammering of like, oh, do you want the government to release child pornography is the most disingenuous shit I could possibly imagine. And comboing this with like Grok's AI companion coming out this week, uh, I mean, fellas, like if you guys were brave enough to weather the storm, I wasn't. It's been a hell of a week, and we're all soldiers and survivors, and so, a big A+ gold star to everybody in here. But I cede my time.
Thanks, Monty. That was really great. I agree with you on what you said. I mean, obviously, I will see what the two boys also have to say, but I think that you're right on. I think that's. I think look at it like a time, like we always say, we're in the, we've crossed the threshold in 2020. We're in the Smoshana, smoky as fuck. We don't know what's going on. I think it's an interesting position, an interesting kind of epistemological or ontological position to stand and witness to like the smoke of decoherence. So, okay, I both of your hands went up at the exact same time. I swear. And so I'm just gonna go with the order that I can see you. So Solar, go ahead. It's not. It really isn't.
I think Matt actually was a little bit ahead of me, so it's deeply personal and meaningful. I'm sorry, Matt. I know that's gotta hurt. Yeah, no, I just wanted to very quickly jump in, right? So just so we have like a quick like working definition of metapolitics, because I don't really fuck with parapolitics at all. Not that I don't think it's real or it's just kind of outside my area of expertise. I'm interested in it, but in kind of like a tertiary way. I enjoy listening to others speak about it, but it's never been like the principal subject of any serious work that I've done. But metapolitics has been very central to what I've been doing for a long time, right? And so at one level, metapolitics is simply having a political discourse about politics, right? Or coming up with a sort of politicized language and a politicized process to discuss and analyze politics itself. But the obvious implication of that is actually doing politics in a manner that instead of being the sort of straightforward, sort of first order embedded way of doing things, like this is my position, and sort of applying that directly, it's kind of like stepping back, taking this bird's eye view, and trying to sort of like steer the political situation in a way where the first order consequences of your actions might not necessarily, at least in an immediate sense, like line up to be exactly what you want, but overall you're trying to sort of shift the board state like in such a way that at like further steps down the line a more favorable sort of outcome will materialize, right? So that's kind of like applying like metapolitical methods. And I think you're totally right, right? Like there's all these like salacious elements of the quote unquote parapolitical with respect to Epstein, and some of that's real. And I want to just make a note on that before I kind of go to the main point of this, which is that this gets to what for me is like a key dividing line conceptually between kind of the mainstream like normie, what I'll just call it like low IQ sort of parapolitical analysis of the situation, which links the sort of elite deviant ritual child abuse practices with like Satanism or like Jewish Kabbalistic like ritual, that kind of cauldron of ideas, right? And I think that's really limited, right? But that's kind of like where like 80% of the commentariat is going on that sort of element of it, is to sensationalize it and to link it with kind of the Judeo-Christian frame, like whatever that means to you in particular, right? And I think the more interesting element of it is exploring this as a kind of conceptual pagan, and I don't mean pagan like, oh, like Indo-European reconstruction or anything like that, but in a kind of neutral, abstract sense, sort of a left-handed path type ritual practice that's enacted by elite circles that have deep ties to not just like our elite generally, but specifically like the global intelligence community. Obviously, not just Mossad, but if you look at like who Epstein's like backers were at the Dalton School and stuff like that, there's direct ties to the CIA, well, and the OSS, like before the CIA, et cetera, et cetera. So this is all to say that like there's kind of like a sort of low IQ trap version of this that's picking up a lot of the audience and the kind of like commentators in a way that's particularly unproductive. And I think it's, to the extent that we're going to engage in the parapolitical element of this, it helps to be as rigorous and precise as possible. And specifically like our angle of being able to sort of like cogently analyze the kind of like ritual grammars of things and the sort of conceptual grammars of like magical practices, for better or worse, right? Like that gives us a good like conceptual toolkit. And just like really quickly to end it, in terms of the sort of metapolitical elements of this is like a metapolitical bomb, right? Because basically it's this issue that's like vibrating with potential and cultural resonance, and every possible seam, like fissure, in this, I'm imagining it like a grenade, right? And every like serration on the body of this grenade is sort of something that is out of political contention, right? It is not something that is currently up for political disputation or discourse, right? Like every aspect of this is sort of beyond the pale one way or another. And that's what makes it so interesting, even as I try to stay aloof and maintain my superior, my air of superior detachment, right? I'm above the plebs, kind of talking about Satan and all that stuff. It actually is kind of an interesting metapolitical bomb that we've got kind of circulating in the discourse, and so I'm enjoying that.
Okay, Matt, I'm really sorry. I'm just going to say one thing. Thank you so much, Solar. That was great. But and also, I appreciate you clarifying what meta politics is, and I didn't mean to sort of conflate it into nothingness. What I meant was, I think Epstein is a parapolitical event, but I think that it has greater metapolitical implications, perhaps related to the things that you are saying. And I think Epstein was a parapolitical event, not only because of its inherent nature and of the things that went on that were quote unquote occulted or parapolitical or behind the scenes or affiliated with elite networks, but I also think that even the way the narrative was filtered to us, and yes, it was, if you understand the trajectory of who kind of cultivated the spark, the genesis of the discussion for Epstein, I think that it's a very controlled narrative in many ways. And I'm not saying controlled as in so much is left out or so much is like hidden, but I mean the way it is told, that is very parafictional. There's no true chronology to the Epstein. Like very few people really have a grasp of like the context of it, the contours of it. So I think that's what I'm trying. That was what I'm trying to say. So thank you, Solar. I do appreciate that. I always want to refine and rectify and clarify myself. So I know you weren't correcting me. I'm not saying that either. I'm just saying that I appreciate that you clarified it for everyone else, and also so I could re-articulate it. Yes, Matt, please go ahead, and thank you so much for being patient.
So while Monty and Solar were speaking, I was thinking about some things. First of all, that again, there are certain aspects to reality that if you are, the typical dark seed, love and light gang, you're gonna try to not pay attention to, but it doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. Like if you don't acknowledge it, it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. And all of those stories, they are kind of a double-edged sword because, again, as Monty and Solar was saying, they can also be used quite effectively to draw attention to certain things that probably shouldn't be in your attention all the time, right? They kind of taint your mind, especially if you're uninitiated, so you don't exactly understand what's going on, like again, all the meta aspects of it and so on. But still, it is interesting to notice that the more you dig into what's actually going on, you see the whole aspects of the thing, right? So, for example, all of these philias kinds like this, that if you go on Wikipedia, they'll say, oh, it's like attraction, right? Like there's a suffix and attraction, but you can also see as like ramifications of the mind. So after the person goes through all the, let's say they basically they're obviously the wordly aspects to it, right? Like you can use this kind of stuff to blackmail people afterwards and so on and so on. But if you go into the tree as well, you can see as if you give in to your desires, then eventually you need more. Like you need a different way to express the same desire, and then you go into those ramifications, which then can become, dark. That's it. It's going to become dark because again, you're going to be basically affecting another person's kether, right? Because they don't have the willpower to choose to be in that situation. And I mean person, but it could be things or animals or whatever, right? It can go super crazy. But anyways, and it goes back to, again, knowing and understanding the tree and how you can make that not be in your reality, because yeah, it wouldn't be cool. Obviously, like it's not something interesting. So the less, again, you or sorry, the more you protect yourself in regards to all those things, the best. And I'll say, since we are going to speak on speculative archaeologies, it is very interesting as well to notice how a lot of the places that people with power would have, like for example castles and etc., or like cathedrals and things like that, how their archaeologies were built, right? So I was in Vienna quite recently, and the archaeology there is like stupendous, super nice in general. But you can see like the palace. I think it's like the royal palace or whatever that I've one of the places that I've been to, and it's crazy. Like you can see the Kabbalah in everything, and it is so crazy that they, in Europe in general, I can see this. They pay homage to the gods all the time, to the old gods, right? Like Hermes, like especially Hermes, a lot of times, because it's quite noticeable, but also other ones. But you can see again how everything that they'll do, it's already planned to not only make use of the tree, but also like try to make it so that when people enter the building, for example, or when they see the building or wherever, they react in a certain way. So they're not only protecting, but they're like attacking and so on. They're doing a bunch of stuff. So it kind of ties into as well how architecture can um, help with symbolism. And like, again, we have a pretty big event, right, in the US that happened that symbolized a lot of stuff. It wasn't just some random thing that went and whatever. Like there's a lot of meta politics going on there, and they use the archaeology, right, of two big buildings, let's say. So yeah, a lot of cool stuff that we can go on that.
That was great. Thank you, Matt. And I just want to say, hey to Vanessa V. Thank you so much, Vanessa. And I was going to write you today. It's quite funny you came. I'm very happy to see you. But I was going to write you because you said a great question in the live yesterday. And I answered it, but I don't think I quite got to where you wanted me to go. And I realized it after. But maybe that's not true, and you can tell me. But I'm sorry. Solar, please go ahead.
No, I just kind of wanted to make my little preliminary sort of comment. Since it seems like we're sort of veering back onto our nominal topic for the day. So because I don't have a lot to say about it, right? I was at such a low level. It was less than a year ago, I think, right, where I'm like, hey guys, should I read this Graham Hancock fella? Is this worth my time? And I did, and I quite enjoyed it. But it's painfully obvious to me, right, that I have very little ability to sort of confirm the veracity of the claims made even in that like kind of entry level book. I could verify the sort of astrological calculations, right, or astronomical calculations, right? I can do math. I can look up star placements and things like that. But the sort of like deeper layer of claims would require me to become somewhere between like an enthusiastic lay scholar and an actual subject matter expert in an area that is kind of outside of my interests. Not that I have no interest, but like I only have one life to live. You got to prioritize your resources, right? So I don't have a lot to say about it. And it was interesting for me to encounter material kind of on that level, right? From this position of sort of extreme humility. It's just in a neutral way, right? Because I'm an idiot when it comes to these things. However, what I found both more interesting in some ways and also more sort of usable was going through the process of acquainting myself a little bit with this kind of like speculative material. Allowed me to kind of get a handle on two things, right? It allowed me to look at, why do I want these things to be true or not, right? Like, let's say that I was entranced with Graham Hancock, right? I was like, oh, this stuff fucking rules. This is cool, right? And I want to embrace it as a tentative working hypothesis. Well, that gives me something to analyze, right? Like, why do I want that? Like, what does that do for me? What does that open up within, whether you want to say my psyche, my sort of mental space, the possibilities that disclose themselves to me if I assume, tentatively or otherwise, that the claims made in this book are true, right? Um, and that's kind of useful to me, like in and of itself, right? Um, and so I guess like I just wanted to, well, I'll just start there, but I guess like maybe there's a personal element to your engagement, you collectively, right? To your engagement with some of this material. And in addition to talking about the actual, like speculative archaeology of the New World, right? And Hapaboria, like what we're here to talk about, I guess I'd be interested in hearing like in what way, like what dimensions of this sort of reflect like desires, aspirations, some sort of mystery that speaks to you on a personal level. And then the second thing that I was going to say is, and then what do you do with that, right? Like, do you incorporate that into your magical practice, into your understanding of yourself in some way? Like, again, I don't mean to sound like too normie and sort of hokey and holistic, but I think you get a sense of like what I'm asking for. And I just like, to me, that would be interesting. Not that everyone has to include that in every time you talk about something, but just like as kind of a secondary sort of more inward layer to an otherwise sort of exoteric topic, right?
I'm going to let Mike go, but really quick, I want to say thank you, Solar. That was obviously always excellent. And also, that you kind of get it. So that is why I called it speculative archaeology. That's why I kept it within the Welcome to Hapaboria frame, because maybe the basal level is about, what do you do with it? First of all, what do you believe? Why do you believe it? What do you do with it? How do you engage with it in a pragmatic and practical way, maybe magical way, metaphysical way, or just to add a consciousness layer? So I think that that is the true essence, you could say, the emptiness essence of the space. Solar hit on it exactly. But again, this is just go with vibes and talk about whatever you guys want to talk about. But that, yeah, if you want to hit on that, that's great too. Okay, I'm sorry, Mike. Please go ahead. Oh, sorry, Mike. Go
Sorry about that. So, yeah, so I'm not an expert on this like at all. I've only partially read one of Graham Hancock's books, but I've watched a bunch of his videos, and I just wanted to segue off of Solar because I mean, I feel the same way. I think one thing that's kept me a little bit away from diving deeper is like, what do I do with all this information? It's interesting to learn about, but I only have so much time in the day, and a lot of the things I want to do are more practical. I want to learn something that I can use, and I mean, at this point in my life, I feel like it's even hard for me to sit down and like watch a TV show or a movie at some points. You have to find time for entertainment, but I only have so much time in the day to do stuff, and I want to get something out of it. I think with Graham Hancock, if you watch his videos, I think he's more trying to open up like the consciousness for a mainstream audience, and he gets a lot of flack from archaeologists. He's going against the grain of archaeology, and he talks about how they're all against him. And even though a lot of the ideas that he's bringing up are really not that provocative, but they're provocative to like mainstream archaeology. Um, and just from the stuff he has said, he just gives more reason to believe in things like astrology, because they built these monuments which are showing like a line with the planets, and he's just trying. I think it's good for people like in this chat, in this space, like you guys don't need to be convinced, like you already know what's going on, but for a mainstream audience he opens up new ideas for a lot of these people. I mean, and other than that, unless you're building a society or something, I don't think the content in his books are going to be super relevant. But I mentioned Robert Temple, and so Graham Hancock is like subtle enough to be on like a Joe Rogan podcast. Robert Temple is not. Robert Temple also talks about a lot of the similar stuff that Graham Hancock talks about. And I'm not going to like steal the show here and like talk about Robert Temple so much. I don't even know that much about all of his content, but he has videos on YouTube and I've read a few of his books and his shit is crazy. And he's like straight up talks about a lot of stuff, like shit that like I can't even say on Twitter because it's way too crazy. Like aliens, like other, like I don't even want to say it even now because I don't like this is I say stuff that's pretty controversial, but like his stuff is it's hard to say it and not look crazy. Um but there is like other things I would like to talk about it, but I'll give other people a chance to talk.
No, this is great. Thank you so much, Matt. I mean, this is why I invited you 100%. And Robert Temple, thank you for correcting me. I appreciate that. And it's a speculative space. So everything that we talk about is just speculative. You don't have to believe it. So no one else has to. Everybody gets to discern, right? I agree with you 100% that Graham is a really good, like, normie entry tier text. Like you are, and it is, and he has the idea. I think you picked up on it. It's exactly that layer, the astrotheological layer tied to the architecture. That is what is so important. And let me also shout out our co-host, Joshua the Branch, Dr. William Birkin, who is in the wilderness, so he is not able to come up as speaker. But let me promote. Joshua does have an episode on Threshold Saints in the past and also in the future, so that's coming up really soon. And he also works a lot with Chris from the King of Cups channel on YouTube, and he works with Mario from Symbolic Studies. And I'm sorry, Joshua, I don't know all the things you do, but I do pay attention. So anyone who wants to check out Joshua, check out Joshua. Okay. I'm not doing this on purpose. Oh, Matt, you did have a really interesting point about the architectures. So this is something that I thought of for Matt really quick, is that there are 9 parishes and 2 municipalities in Bermuda. So I just always found that really interesting. I've never heard anyone really discuss it. And they're all named after British counties or English counties. So kind of cool. Okay, Monty, I saw your hand go up, and then Matt. Okay, sorry guys.
Yeah, I don't really want to I don't want to be a ball hog here. It's there's just something that a common thread that I'm kind of hearing in this conversation right now, that kind of at least like for me has helped me like kind of stay like grounded, especially with I mean even Graham Hancock, a lot of these like ancient civilization things, whether it be Epstein, whether it be of the various things that we're constantly bombarded with. They're purposely designed to, capture your attention and, influence your decision making. But really, a very important question that we always have to ask ourselves whenever it comes to things of like this magnitude is that you really need to be investigating your desires. Why are you interested in this thing? And if you can't answer that question in like an honest and honest in a succinct manner as well, then you kind of have no business investigating it, and you're kind of leading yourself to ruin. So especially whenever something's in the headlines or something's bombarding the timeline, for me, it's always been best practices to really just like, why do I care about XYZ, and like who is responsible for me like feeling this way. But yeah, that's my 2 cents.
No, thank you, Monty. And I think that is the most perhaps kind of ideas, speculative Gnostics, just as a idea, right? I'm not saying that anyone is a speculative Gnostic here, but when we're together, we're all kind of speculative Gnostics. So I think we can say maybe the greatest metaphysical component of of all of this is, what do you want to believe and why? And like, the one thing is like, the great work is yourself. So why are you putting your attentions over here, over here, over here, over here, that things aren't necessarily serving you? I'm not saying that everything has to be about in service to your great work, but I think that there is a really important idea in what Monty said. So, yeah, okay. Sorry, Matt, please go ahead, and apologies, brother. Thank you.
Oh, good. Actually, sorry for derailing on architecture for a bit. I actually confused the topics, but it's fine because I'm pretty sure it's gonna circle back to it. Yeah. Anyways, about archaeologies, right? So Solar asked, and I was thinking about here how, like, why exactly would you study things like that, or how would you use it in a magical way, and so on, right? So I would say the first point is something similar to what Mike said, that you can kind of prove or help make more sense of things that maybe are too abstract. So if you're kind of still in like normie zone and you need some kind of, foundation for, okay, why would astrology matter? Why would whatever other thing matter? And then you have all those like stories about older people using this and like being successful or whatever in their eras, then it's like, oh, okay, kind of makes more sense. But to me, even more importantly, if you subscribe to a specific story, right? That's what archaeology is doing. You are basically digging for the stories, right? If we want to do a kabbalistic name reading here, you have the arc, right? So you can say it's the Ankh even. Logi, so you have the study of the Ankh, the study of the Enki even. So all the primordial things, right? So you're digging for those, and then eventually you find stuff. So it's basically whenever the guys that are taking care of the metapolitics are like, okay, we need some new stuff, guys. They go up, they say, oh yeah, the archaeologists found this new device from however many thousand years. It's like, okay, how true is that actually? It's gonna maybe not be that true, but okay, if you subscribe to the ideas, you can make your story be more relevant. Because again, if you're, like Jim was saying, doing your own great work and you have a bullshit backstory, then it's not going to be super nice. It's going to be harder for you to maybe keep up with all the magical things that you're doing, because Monday hits and you're back to your 9 to 5 or whatever, and then what the fuck, like if there's no cool backstory, then I would say it's very hard to mentally keep up, being in the world, at least personally, knowing the stories and having something to look up to. Also, for example, if you are someone like me, which understand that this is a simulator, so reality here is not the ultimate reality. Okay, that's what I mean by simulator. Is that okay? So what's after this? Like, if you go out of it, then where do you go to? And then archaeology doesn't have to be only looking towards this Earth, but like the simulators before it. So the way I understand it is, again, each sphere it's its own simulator. So you can say that the whole simulator here, it's Malkut itself, not only Earth, but like the whole reality we are experiencing, and that there would be then at least 9 other simulators before it. So if we can go as far as we can go, okay, there's Keter at the beginning, but maybe there's even more. That's the furthest we can go, And I'll say that the most same way you can do these things if you're initiated already is, don't look up for the stories, just go and with your mind go to the places. Like, that's it. You should be able to like, just whatever you want to call it, remote viewing, astral projection, or whatever, right? Just go there. If you have a hunch, okay, maybe that place is important or whatever, just go there, try to fetch for things. Obviously, then you can ground whatever you find with other people's works, right? But then again, it's going to be more likely that whatever you find is going to be more important for you than whatever someone is just advertising on the timeline. Okay, so as always, be worried about this, like Monty was saying, and I completely agree. Like, understand why you're looking to that, to not make it a like time wasting activity, because it could be just, it becomes novelty, right? And then eventually you're just reading for the sake of novelty and so on, and it's not helping you at all. But it can be very interesting, especially when, again, you can find stories that hits home, you know. So again, if you're tapped in, then you start listening to a story or hearing it and seeing symbols and so on, and stuff starts to come. Basically, you start to download more stuff because you got in touch with that. I'll say that's what's most helpful about interacting with all those things.
That was great, Matt. Thank you so much. I'm going to let Mike go, but I'm going to say a really quick word. Is that I think, to go back to something Solar said, is like, what can you do with all of this? The one thing I like about speculative masonry, or like looking at these kinds of archaeological ideas, is like, if you are the builder right now, are there ideas in this story that you then can take and make of something? You know, it doesn't have to be like right now. It can be ideas. It can be ideas you archive and sort of put together, synthesize for yourself. And then maybe someone in the future, maybe it will be us in synthesis. I'm just saying, speculatively, of course. But that's sort of what the whole point is like, we're here and we're trying to look at it in a different way. We're trying to go against the, the conspiracy grain. We're trying to go against the modern magical grain, where it's the rebellious spirit of the daughter lives very strongly in these spaces, I would say. So yeah, that's the whole point, is like, yeah, we should try and look for the alternative narrative in order to not necessarily understand the hyperspace archipelago better, but to understand like what we can bring into the future more concretely. Okay, I'm sorry, Mike. Please go ahead.
No, it's okay. Don't worry about it. So I just, when you said Anka, it reminded me of some of the things actually that Graham Hancock has talked about. And one of the things is the Ark of the Covenant. I'm sure many of you have heard about it. And I've heard about it before I even really knew what was going on with it. And I hope I don't butcher the details of it, but it's this essentially like magical box. And it's been kept in Ethiopia for, I'm pretty sure it's Ethiopia for like hundreds, or if not like thousands of years. And it's protected, and it has a history behind it, and it was used in like times of war. They would bring out this box, and I what exactly the box does is hard to like say exactly, but what is said about it is that when it's opened, like when it was stolen and it was opened, it killed like an entire city. It's just filled, is like filled with like intense energy, and the people who work around it and guard it, when they're chosen to guard it, and when they're chosen, it's a death sentence, because the energy around it is so intense that it kills the people around it. And that is just interesting if you believe it or not. I believe it honestly, because there's evidence that it exists. That you can, well, I don't know if you can go to it actually. But Graham Hancock has talked about it, and he has gone to like the place where it exists. And I think it's interesting because I think it makes you think about just how this reality is. It feels like a video game. Like you can, if you have like the correct specifications for like a spiritual device, it creates like a powerful technology. If you have like the exact like length and like, and then, and it's like rare and it's guarded, and we're not accustomed to things like this in modern day, but this is something that exists to this day, and people are guarding it in a church, and they die when, and they I think they get cataracts or something. I have to look it up. But that is something that definitely is in a similar category of, but it's more just technology focused and not just like to the stars. Like what else can we do with different types of spiritual technologies?
That was really well said, Mike. Thank you. I'm gonna let our new guest speaker, Jay Rockazulu, introduce himself. But first, I'm gonna say I agree with you, Mike. I think that beyond, there's actually people. This is something I think, is that people get fixated on the technological sort of possibilities of whatever that is. I personally think it's a lot more to do with consciousness.
Thanks a lot. Man, I am so thrilled to be a part of this experience. Jin the Ninja has created a lot of great art, and I've seen a lot of your great commentary and images on Twitter. Following you, liking you as much as possible, and retweeting you out if ever need be. I'm currently in Kansas City. I'm in America, and my co-creative consciousness is collectivizing into divine comedy. And so comedy and spirituality simultaneously. So if you laugh, you laugh. If you cry, you cry. If you love, you love. If you experience the bliss that is currently occurring in the human nature of what is I want to say, toxicity within the items that sometimes we have to accidentally consume because there's no other resource around to purify our food system into the most organic nature possible, which is like the purest waters and the purest divine crystalline chi that we could bliss up into our mind, body, spirit, Metatron cube coming to mind, all those chi points within our energy field and mind, body, spirit, up from the constellation star system of Orion, downward to the constellation star system, polar opposite to that, Polaris, I believe, and the central sun of the universe. So we're only in the Milky Way galaxy right now as very minute detail within the perspective of the universal consciousness of extraterrestrial consciousness off-world, of these archetypes of ascended masters, Christ, Buddha, and Hindu gods, with the destructive nature of their imagery being seen as negative to people from the past, now seen with light to the people of the future, because we transcend the violent nature of our consciousness, just as we communicate with extraterrestrials on the open contact level of channeling and through sightings, UAP sightings, UFO sightings that are currently ongoing in Congress, talking about the noobs that haven't been there yet. All the noobs, all the consciousness noobs that are around us, around our space, have not experienced these things, and they're like 70 or 80 really old people are hitting the grave, or they're very young people coming up, just flowering their minds. And so it happens at any age, at any time, except when you're a very young child. You won't be able to grasp the entire picture until your consciousness gains an exponential amount of experience. And the exponential amount of experience is obviously the things we've been looking at: the spirituality, the occultism, the archaeology, the evidence, the facts, the objectives through the subjective lens of our internet fascinations and intrigues, as opposed, I would say, as differentiation than other people's interests, which have been we would have trusted that would have been de-emphasized by this point in 2025, July. But the ideas of which they are still interested in, which is a type of materialism, of course. We would think, oh, we would move beyond that by now. Yeah, this is 2025. No, 2026 is the year. No, 2027 is the year we move and transcend beyond it. And likely it will be 2027. And so it's going to be a preparation up to that point of 2027, which we're grooving through as our individual consciousnesses are just grooving, blazing through it. All the other individual consciousnesses are going to be within barbed wires all the way up to the year 2027. They're going to be screaming, they're going to be yelling, they're going to be in so much pain and suffering, and we've already glided through it our entire lives. So I just thank Jin the Ninja, Solar, Matt Mora, Space Mike, Montago, Joseph, and the other listeners that are listening to this conversation right now. I am Jay Rockazulu, a mystical channeler of sorts, comedian in Kansas City, and artist, designer, desiring of this new earth, this new age we have always thought would be here by now. This Christ consciousness, Buddha consciousness, Krishna consciousness, even Mohammed consciousness to those of the Middle East that need to make peace, like their prophet supposedly is supposed to do. So thank you. Infinite unconditional love to every single sentient life out there.
Thank you so much, Jay. Appreciate that. Awesome. I've seen you all over the timeline. Don't worry about it, Jay. I see that you like and retweet me. I appreciate it. You don't have to be my simp. Nobody does. I don't even expect the Grey Lodge to. Before John, I never even used to retweet my live appearances. John was like, "You have to." I was like, "Why?" He's like, "Because we want to watch you." So I sincerely, you don't have to be my fan. It's I don't have fans. I just have mutuals and friends like across the timeline. So, but thank you so much for coming up. Appreciate that, and obviously, yeah, you have to laugh. And we are in the. I mean, I don't know if you know this, Jay, but I did say we're in the Aeon of the Daughter. We've entered into that threshold, and the Aeonic words are love, will, and life force. So let's fucking go. The world is what you build of it, what you make of it, and it's like right now. So yes, I'm sure Solar is dying to say something. Please, Solar, go ahead.
Yeah, no, it's fine. I was trying to desperately hold on to my thought there for a minute. Yeah, no, I just kind of wanted to circle back. I think one of the most sort of damaging things we can import from our broader society is just in terms of the genealogy of ideas is this sharp distinction between technology and anything sort of like spiritual or non-material, or really just like materiality and consciousness, things like that. Those types of dichotomies are tremendously unproductive, right? And it feeds into, for example, this kind of like bizarre approach to something like the hypothetical Ark of the Covenant, right? That may or may not be at this particular church in Ethiopia. For example, there are others, right? We could be talking about a particularly puzzling example of an early Vajra. We could be talking about what the hell was actually going on in the Great Pyramids. You know, what are these caverns for? It applies to a lot of cases, right? Um, but anyway, so there's this impulse to say, oh, well, these are actually pieces of ancient technology, right? That have degraded, they've broken, right? So they're giving everyone like turbo cancer or whatever. I'm not saying those things aren't true, but kind of like assigning a wholly sort of like material cause to those effects, right? Like something that could be, at least theoretically, fully accounted for within the paradigm of like, you know, reductionist materialism. And I'm much more interested in the idea. And again, my first encounter from this was Jason Rosa Giorgiani, who is not speculative, who I do not approach speculatively. Every single word Jason has ever written or said is true. We love you, Jason. You are the true leader of the alt right now and forever. And please come on Threshold Saints when you listen to this podcast, this live. You should get in Jin's DMs right this second. Okay, we love you. But no, this idea, right, that the Vajras, for example, are, you know, they are technology, right, in the same way that like a computer is technology or a hammer is technology, but they rely on inputs. The way that they are actuated or manipulated by the user involves sort of like capacities of consciousness or other mental, you know, paranormal, however you want to kind of slice that up. That are not currently accepted by mainstream Western, you know, sort of authorities on the matter, right? That they're psychically actuated devices or actuated by sort of particular acts of consciousness. I find that really compelling. Like that to me is my like through line of interest in the subject matter as far as it goes. Also, as I kind of bow out, because I'm gonna have to go. I have hard cutoffs for this Friday, next Friday. Got too much going on in life. But I'm also interested in the obvious fact. And again, Giorgiani has a lot to say about this. I don't necessarily want to go as far as he does, but you know, like a Vajra is a weapon of war, right? And I'm not trying to undercut peace and love. I'm not trying to overly complicate bodhicitta or say that Hitler was actually an avatar of love or whatever. I'm not trying to go there, but I'm just saying it's worth pointing out that some of these things seem to be destructive devices, right? And in a lot of cases, I don't know if Hancock actually gets into it that much, but other kind of speculative archaeologists get into this as well. There seems to be a great deal of conflict that was going on in this sort of prehistorical age when we were using these kind of like these synthetic, like mental, physical type devices, right? Like, so when humanity, at least some significant subset of it, was operating at this sort of higher level of consciousness, we were also killing the shit out of each other. Or like nuking each other, right? Or the UFOs were going around like engaging in a timeline war, or whatever your exact line is. Anyway, I just find that very interesting. I'm not trying to make a sort of ideological point about it, but I just kind of wanted to hang it there. And yeah, it was wonderful talking to seeing all you guys tonight. All the best.
Thank you, Brother Solar. Really appreciate you, obviously. And that was what you just talked about. It was exactly what the space was really supposed to be about. And of course, I would love Jason Giorgiani to come on my show. I've asked him a few times. But regardless, he did go on another Hyperborean podcast, I have to say, which is not higher viewed than mine. A YouTube channel. Maybe that's why, because the kids is a YouTube channel. So, I don't have that cachet yet. But definitely I would like to speak to him. Oh, hello, Sir Tim. Of course, we love Sir Tim. Comes from the great state of Hawaii. And Sir Tim, if you want to come up as speaker, I'm just going to bring you up. You don't have to speak or anything, but Sid, and thank you to Brother Solar, of course, because that is what I was thinking the entire time when Mike was talking about the Ark of the Covenant. Like, yeah, it is Vajra. And it is like what Solar said, it is a weapon of war if we're talking about the Zoroastrian or the Hindu versions. But if we're talking about the Buddhist version, it is not, in fact, a weapon of war. It's a weapon of transmutation. So just keep that in mind. It's all about consciousness. It's all about Gevra and Hesed together in synthesis, as I always say, because that is true. Like that is the reality. That is like how to be a builder. Is like to go Tiferet Yesod. How am I building? How am I rectifying? And then how am I going to go higher? That's what I think. That's really what I think. So I think keep that in mind. It's never just one thing. And even if so say the ancient peoples, whatever they were, maybe they went off on a right-hand path. Maybe they went off on the left-hand path. But all we have now is we kind of know that the middle path is there. It's not hidden for us. And so we also can perhaps agree that it is the best approach. So if we are in like a collective agreement, at least generally, of that idea, then that's what we should be doing, is synthesizing in the center, rectifying the center, not right. So it wouldn't just be a weapon of war. You could say the Vajra is very much a weapon of transmutation. It is very much of restoring the energy channels in the bodies, the winds, and restoring them to sort of high order functioning. So do I think that they do have some piece of like some Vajra that was like charged with some divine saintly energy or angelic energy? Sure. Yeah, they could totally have that. Or it could be something more complicated, something that is more about our consciousness in perhaps energetic relationship with metallurgical alchemy. It's kind of something that's been a recurrent theme for the Grey Lodge, I think, generally in all the spaces. So, okay, Matt, Mike, and Joseph. Okay, Matt, please go ahead.
Yes. So one thing that I wanted to chip in now is the idea that, okay, suppose that there is indeed those any of those things that we find, right? The technologies, the supposed technologies. There's like not Greek, but it's like the green super ancient clock thing or whatever. I think that it's Greek or something. I don't know. I don't remember now the name. But there's all of those. There's supposedly the Ark of the Covenant. There's the Ark of Anubis and Isis, which to me it's like those copy paste moments, like the same thing, just older, but it doesn't matter. So suppose there's all these things, right? Again, if we cannot explain them with our current technology, so if we cannot explain with like, hey, that's 100% this thing that we can also do right now, right? Say that that's the case, which it is most of the times, even with, let's say, some buildings that we have, right? So we find archaeology, we use archaeology to find those buildings or temples or like cities or like underground stuff, and then okay, we cannot quite explain it if we go through the lens of science or like normie archaeology, right? Again, to me, the most valuable thing you could do as an initiate is go there yourself and try to look into, okay, how were these things actually used, and like what was the story here? Okay, so I agree with Solar that there was probably a time of a lot of discordance, let's say. Yeah, I mean, whatever the word you want to use. And to be honest, I think that's part of the game as well. So we have Givera, right? So if people are not necessarily controlling it well, it is coming to that in a way, right? So the more we also try to say it doesn't exist, it just doesn't make it stop. And it's funny because I saw the other day something that made me chuckle a bit, that the famous like peace sign, that it's like three stripes in like a column, but the three stripes are to the bottom, right? So the famous peace sign, basically, if there's like a rune, if I'm not mistaken, so it's like a Nordic rune, which is the opposite. So it's like a tree, right? It's going up, and you're getting that, which is supposed to be also something like life or whatever, and you're putting it down, and you're calling it a peace sign. And what people do when they go to like, you know, uh, um, like an event and go against war, what they're doing, they're again creating a current against something. So they're actually just feeding that thing. So the best way to, let's say, end something that you don't like is to just ignore it, just remove your attention from it. It's all a consciousness thing. So the more you're talking about archaeologies, the more we got to remember that, okay, do we want to feed into the stories that actually would improve like your life, would make you evolve, or do you want to fit into the stories which are just, some propaganda or whatever, right? Just some gibberish. Because if you make people believe that they don't have a good story, and you can see how that happens with specific subgroups in countries. Let's say a specific subgroup in America maybe will have their story said that, oh, you actually came, like, I can give an example in Brazil, which is very common. A lot of people have this story in mind that Brazil didn't work out because the people that went to Brazil were like exiled from Portugal, or like prisoners or whatever. Like only bad people went to Brazil. That's why Brazil doesn't matter, or like it's bullshit and so on. And keep that, if you have that in mind as the story of your country and you're born there, like how can you have something to, like how can you have the will to evolve, because you think you are already doomed by birth. But if you expand that in a way that says, oh, humanity, was born as some kind of slave whatever thing from another tribe that came and conquered earth, some people believe in something like that, which isn't to say it's true or not true, but again, if you fit into that kind of story, then what are you bringing to yourself, right? And yeah, it's just very interesting that the more you dig, the more you're gonna find. I think it's never ending, but also the stories repeat so much. It's like, I'm tired. I think me and Jin had this played with this already in the chat a couple times, of like everything is Enki and then Liu all over again. Like it's kind of getting tired. It's kind of like the author of the stories in this simulator is kind of bored or something, like or like uninspired, just keeps recycling the same stories. And it's funny because, okay, here I'm talking about some myth, right? So you could say that yeah, it's people actually want the stories to be the same because they're telling they're teaching something or whatever. But I was at a work event, and then I was speaking to some people, and one of them, as I was speaking my story to them, right, like my own personal story, this character story, they were saying, what the fuck? My story is exactly the same. So as in like the same themes or the same things going on, but just obviously he's from a different country or whatever. So then again, you can see how even your own archaeology, how well do you know your ancestry, like your family's story and so on. And the more you know it, the more of a basis you will have to know the overall archaeology, the overall history. Okay, so that's also a very, I'd say, productive way to go about these things. Not look into necessarily just other people's works and so on, but also your own story, like do your own research and so on.
Very well said, Matt. Thank you so much. And I'm going to be really quick, but I want to say two things. What Matt said about the origin myth of like not only of your country, I think that's a really interesting layer that we've often discussed in these speculative spaces, is kind of like the meta myth of America and what does it mean? And what is it like? And what, like the story that you tell of it is exactly what Matt said. That is what it becomes for you. That's part of what is in your perception. So I agree with that. There's just and many destructive personal myths that got told, that got spun as narratives that were not even about personal. It wasn't even about identity. It was like it was some kind of like mythic narrative that didn't really apply to 2025 or 2016 or all of those kinds of like it was sort of trapping people, you could say, in like the Kali Yuga, the black cube matrix. So I agree with that, Matt. And I also think though that, I also think, oh, okay, I'm sorry. Mike, please go ahead, and then Joseph.
It's okay. You could continue, but don't feel like you have to cut yourself off. But after everyone talking, I feel like the things I even want to talk about now has changed like significantly. But with what Matt was saying, uh, it is really important to form your own opinions and not just believe what other people are saying. And I've had some rough instances where I've met people who have not formed their own opinion. And I mean, this is many people, but I've had some like really rough instances, especially in the esoteric side of things, because it is like a hard like area to navigate. And some people try to use certain resources as like a catch-all for everything. And that's just not there's no catch-all resources. There's no like best like writer or author or like person who knows everything. You have to, I feel like even with most authors, there's maybe like one or two books that are like really good, and then the rest are like there's no one person, there's no one resource, and you have to form your own opinions. And then what we were talking about before with Jin, like when you said consciousness, and yeah, I agree, and it is consciousness, and everything you're saying about the tools would have been more like used for harmful purposes rather than like helpful purposes. I mean, any tool can be used for, you can use a hammer to like hit a nail, and then you can use a hammer to hit somebody in the head. And it's always like that. And I want to say more stuff, but unfortunately this is recorded and I have to be a little bit careful with some of the like examples I'm using. But one thing I do want to say is like with the Ark of the Covenant, I think there is interesting things when it comes to it with just, it's not just how the dimensions in like the type of wood and everything like manipulate the energy or like whatever it's doing. Like consciousness is what it is at its like essence. You could just, I mean, I don't know what the Ark of the Covenant even did, but when it was opened, apparently like something was activated and like something happened. You could do that with any type of box, um, or anything. But with there's like certain, but there's something like really interesting about the dimensions of it and like the wood and like everything else that went into like the creation of it. Like maybe like the exact time it was created, and like everything was like very important to creating like this specific thing. And I don't know, maybe it can only be created during certain times of like every certain 100 years when there's like a certain alignment or something. Like who knows? But it's just interesting that something like that came about. And there's it just sticks around, and things like that don't come around a lot, and we don't know a lot about how those things are created, obviously. But there's only one Ark of the Covenant, and over hundreds and hundreds, if it does exist. I mean, in terms of like myths and stories, like I haven't heard about other similar like myths that are similar, but like throughout like that time, like only one of those came about. And why didn't other people create it? Like why was that not like a, you know, like a catapult? Like why weren't they just everywhere? There's just one.
Well, what if I told you I knew what was in the Ark of the Covenant, Mike? What would you say?
Please stop. Yeah, I'd love to know.
No, I can only say speculatively, of course. But no, honestly, Mike, thank you so much for coming up and saying that. I was gonna say something about Jason Giorgiani, and like he like I'm not saying this in a like I'm not being mean to Jason Giorgiani. I would really like him off my show, but his ideas are pretty wild. And so, but they do kind of remind me of like Solar and his like off in the wilderness sometimes ideas. So I appreciate what Solar said about Jason, but you know, I really think at least we can say speculatively aliens, okay, like crazy war technology, Vajra, sure. But what is really Vajra? What is Vajra in Bond? That says it's 26,000 years old. So maybe speculatively we can just listen to what those people say, and they say that as does Buddhism, or Bon is part of Buddhism. Really, that's how they consider it as well. But Diamond Thunder is your consciousness. That's Rigpa. That's like, that's fifth density. That's death. That's what it is. So maybe they found a way to contain that spark. Maybe because there are tantric sadhanas that talk about instilling in crystals. So some of you know that I'm friendly with Sachiki. I owe Sachiki a huge debt of gratitude for teaching me what Matt has allowed me to borrow from him as pop Kabbalah. But Sachiki was really the one who introduced me to the idea of pop Kabbalah as it is. Matt gave me permission to use the term. He works on crystal quantum computing. He also did a really interesting experiment where they hooked up a 1999 like compact computer, and they ran like an AI on the crystal quantum hard drive. I don't know. It's pretty something kind of amazing about that. Maybe that is what's in the arc. I'm just saying, just speculatively. I'm not saying Sachi is making the arc. I'm saying, just like there are many hosts, just like there are many angels, many in the hierarchies, many in the, many in the three worlds, you could say. I know there are four worlds, but we're saying three worlds right now. So many in the form worlds. We're saying, all of those things. But in Buddhism, it really comes down to the single pointedness, right? And so why am I emphasizing that? Because that's what a Vajra is. Like when you look at Buddhist iconography, like it is in Buddhism, like way more than Zoroastrianism, way more than Hinduism. Like, yes, all the gods, sure, they wield certain things, but the Vajra really it's that infinite figure eight. It's like the magician's eight. It's the transformative power to change the four elements into that purification. I think Mike was even talking about this, or maybe Matt was. I'm sorry, boys, I can't remember, but that's what it is. It's to transmute the elements within yourself and how they function, and to take them down to their most pristine quality, and to hear the aeonic word, or whatever you want to call it, the primordial bija. Like, there's something so essential about that. Something, I don't know. I think that there is. I've spoken to other people. I've been recording a lot, and they, even though they're not Buddhist, they kind of have very similar conclusions. So I have to posit. I'm so sorry, Joseph. I have to posit that maybe there is a truth to that. Okay, please go ahead. And big apologies, Joseph. I apologize. Bow down. Joseph, we can't hear you. You can hear him, Matt? No. Okay, well, we'll bring Joseph. Maybe we'll bring Joseph back up. Okay, that's what we'll do. Sorry. Sorry, Matt. Go ahead.
Okay, while Joseph comes back, just want to touch upon a topic that I was having it here, but waiting for the time. So basically, there's this idea, right? Very, again, speculative. I'm not going to say it is or it isn't. There's this very speculative idea that actually, okay, the whole sequence of events started, at least as far as we can tell, looking back, okay, back in Sirius. Okay, so all that region. So you'd have that, again, war scenario, whatever, people, claiming powers or fighting for whatever reason. Again, you see, it doesn't change much from the stories. And from that, so considering the technology was much more advanced, okay, people were put into some kind of simulator, okay. Now, before I keep going, keep in mind, if you never played a VR game where you can actually walk while you're playing, so like imagine a VR game, you cannot see real life, you can only see the game, and you can walk while you are in the game. Because I feel like when you have to walk through the joystick, it kind of hurts the immersion a lot. But if you can do that and you play it, you don't have to play it even for that long, like 40 minutes or so, 50 minutes it's enough. You are probably gonna feel when you come back like, oh, what the fuck? Like, yeah, wait a second, real life, yeah, you need to touch some grass or something to come back. So it is not hard. It's just a matter of technology for you to kind of trick your brain or your senses into thinking you are living something that you aren't. Okay. So think that again, back in Sirius, they would put everyone or part of people, whatever, into one simulator. And then when eventually time passes, people get technology inside the simulator, builds another one, and so on. So kind of like Rick and Morty has this episode as well, right? He has the car battery thing. So it's a similar idea. Like I said before, if we consider each of the spheres as one of them, we would be in the 10th simulator, building the 11th. So we are already building the next one. And again, it keeps infinitely going. But it is why I'm bringing this up, because, okay, this could be just random, whatever, but you can try looking into the story of the Orion's Hunter. I think it would be like that in English. So Orion's Hunter. So you have very similar stories between, the Egyptians and the Greeks, and then you're gonna have, in the cultures that came from them and so on, that kind of copied them and so on and so on. So that there's the whole constellation, right, of Orion and so on, and it kind of touches on that a little bit, which is very interesting, because if you would think, okay, wait a second, if the stories didn't start here, then it would make sense that some stuff is much older than we can tell, let's say, than we could tell with physical proof. Because that's the thing as well. Okay, how far can we go, considering at some point things just, they change so much, we cannot keep more history, right? So again, just touching some speculative stories out there.
Thank you, Matt. Appreciate that. Joseph, please go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, you sound good.
Okay, fantastic. Sorry for the little technical glitch. So thank you, Matt and Mike and Jen. So if we look at technologies as extensions of ourselves, the wheel is an extension of the foot, for example, then I want to say, Marshall talks about like the first technology was probably the spoken word. What I think I want to take it back even further, it was probably a thought. And therefore, it makes me think that individual consciousness itself is a kind of technology. It's an extension of something. I don't know what, but it came out of what you can say it came out of collective consciousness. You can say it came out of the Tao. But individual consciousness is an extension of something. And, we see this even in, the Western Judeo-Christian, I came up Catholic, so we look at Genesis, okay? And whatever the original language for Genesis, I don't know if that was Hebrew, but I'm blanking on it right now, but the original word for the tree of knowledge, it had a technical connotation. The tree of knowledge of good and evil. It had the word is, the translated word is, it's a technical knowledge. And so what happened there? There was an immediate contraction, and God got pretty scared. It was a no-no. He could not have that. So there was some kind of like, and then, then you get the first partnership betrayal, you get the first murder right after that. So technology and violence are somehow linked. And even in the Greek stories, Iliad, which even when Homer collected them, those stories were already so old. Athena springs, she's supposed to be like the mental consciousness. What happens? She springs kind of violently from Zeus's forehead, and I think even the word wrath is in the very first line of the Iliad. Sing to me, O Muse, something about Achilles' wrath. So there is something about the extension of whatever was coherent and balanced into individual consciousness that caused some kind of imbalance, which unfortunately for, I would say, most of the Western civilization, not that the Eastern does not have any kind of violence, but there has been all tons of forms of violence anywhere. But what you're talking about, Jin, about the Vajra, which is news to me, that, I don't know, there's something on that side, and I don't know, is it more right-brained? Is it more Gestalt that you can bring all that stuff together, whereas the Western civilization became more left-brained and more rational? Of course it did. But that's my main point here. I want to thank you so much for your patience.
No need to thank us, Joseph. Thank you so much. Appreciate that. Obviously, I love when you come up, and it always gives us like such a great. Everybody here has heard me speak so many times. I mean, it's interesting it's interesting for me too. It makes like the space a lot more dynamic. Not that I don't love all the co-hosts as they are, but a new voice, it adds a new polarity. So I appreciate that. I think that this has a lot to do with what Joseph is saying. I think that we, came from the primordial Mu, the Vajra Mu. That's how it's referred to in Buddhism. That's also interesting. The Diamond Thunder, sort of primordial grandmother, the Barbello, the swamp from which everything came. As Taoism also refers to it in very similar terms, as a kind of primordial grandmother figure. So, the chaos. Everybody, like Ram always talks about this. The spider grandmother, Chamunda. Yeah, sure, we arise from that. We arise from the sunken husk, sure. But there's like, if you know Indian religions or Buddhism at all, especially if you follow me, because obviously I preference the wild tantric iconography, right? You know that there are different versions of her story. As I posited, there's an aeon of the daughter, but there's also been aeons of the mother, and she's had multiple ones. And each aeon of the mother doesn't necessarily have to be 5,000 years ago. It can simply be that you've heard maybe me retell the story in a particular way. That's an aeon in your mind. You've completed an aeon by hearing the story. So you're able to reconcile Kabbalistically, tantrically, whatever. Kabbalistically is probably an easier way to think about it. But you're able to reconcile the paradoxes of the incomplete Leela as you knew it. That's like kind of what I took away from what Joseph was saying. I don't know, maybe that is so off base, but I kind of think the story completes by us hearing it. And then if we understand it, then it adds like another dimension. It like kind of expands into infinite space. Maybe not at Rigpa, but maybe that's kind of what Hesed is too. It's like this perception. It's like, oh, the mother has had multiple Leelas. Because if you look from it I'm not as hard on the Westoids as Joseph is. And I think it's interesting from that perspective. And I don't think he's wrong in that. But I'm just saying, I think if you look at Western sort of magic, the there's such a primacy, such like a deep well of like desire for this female goddess. And then when we look at it from a Dharmic perspective, and it's like you guys are going like it's like for me it's like a little far, because like yeah, of course it exists, but it exists in union, in yab yum. That's like the fundamental empty nature of reality. It's like them together. So for me, it's like when it goes too far, I'm like, okay, yes, of course the Shakti, of course the Dakinis. That's a very powerful way to penetrate the densities of the Sephira, or like to climb the Marga, or whatever it is, whatever you're doing, right? Because those experiences are very similar. I'm not saying they're exactly the same, but they are very similar. And to place overbearance on one or the other is imbalanced in a way. And that's why I also like the idea of like, this has been something we've talked about in the lodge a lot, like traditional values, quote unquote. What does that even mean? Like, a lot of these things are in flux. And I think we're all reconciling with like this thing where like Solar and I, we definitely played like trad LARP a little. And it's not that I'm a conservative person. Like I would legit say that if someone asked me in my real life, I would say I'm conservative. And I am. I'm conservative in my personal life, and I like have a generally conservative worldview. But that doesn't. I'm not like I'm still a millennial. I'm still like like we're too weird. It's like we're too past like those sort of old labels. I think we've talked all about this as well. Like we're post-conceptual in many ways. So it's like, how do we even begin to describe like the world as it is right now? I think that goes back to what Matt was even saying. It's like the stories that we tell, right? And like that's what the whole idea of doing the Hyperborea and Aetherpunk, particularly those two, was about the meta myth, like the meta mythologies. Well, what if we just tell them? What if we just tell them right now? It doesn't have to be perfect. It can just be like what we think of at the time. It can be like I have listened to podcasts of myself from 2 or 3 years ago, and I cringe. I think I'm like, what am I talking about? Like, what am I like? Why am I saying it like this? But it's okay because it's just part of the canon. Then it's just part of like your breadth of knowledge, your breadth of work, and then you expand and you refine and you move forward, and that's all you can do. Because what else can I do? Should I go cry in a corner? No, you just you move forward. So that's kind of how I think of it. It's progressive without any of the leftist bullshit. It's like I'm gonna think for myself. Thank you very much. I'm not on like Mike was saying. You have to discern for yourself. Like this is a whole new world. That's what I kind of think. And that's why I always say like it's welcome to Hyperborea or return to Hyperborea, because we've been here before. As I always say, like Battlestar Galactica reimagined, obviously. Everything that has happened before will happen again, but that is also why we need to complete the Leela. That is why people get so hyper focused on the Tartaria or the mud floods. And I'm not saying none of that stuff is true. I think we all know that history and narratives, it's not to even say it's victor and loser is way overly simplistic. That is not even remotely accurate, in my opinion. It is driven by metamagic and metapolitics and even the parapolitical events within the greater arc of history. So much so that it becomes opaque, obfuscated, and that is also the point. It's like there's no point of inquiry where we're allowed to go beyond the very narrow confines. The klipa of Bina is the obscuration of text. So, when you place textual confines, you're saying you can't really go outside of this ideas. This is the canon. This is it. This is this is the people complain about this in the university and the academy all the time, right? It's like the narrow confines. That is a klipa. We've talked about this so many times. I'm sure all you want to kill me for bringing it up. But it bears repeating. It's like, why are we always so contained within narratives? I don't mean in like in a transgressive way, and I think that's why sometimes people even go transgressive, because they're questioning why they're in this confine. But there are times where you can say, like, yeah, actually, why are we thinking in this confine in this instance? It can be context dependent. That's very Giveratic, right? You're using discrimination. You're not saying, okay, we are not going to discuss. I don't even want to say this on recording. We'll just say it like in a really normie way, but you can all draw your own conclusions about what I am actually talking about. But like drinking or voting laws, that's a very relevant topic, right? Voting laws. We like about lowering the age. Like there are just some things that we don't need to get into. Like that seems like such a distraction rather than like a fundamental like question. And I think that that is sort of the point of also parapolitics, is to provide this kind of, I guess, backdrop of the Leela. And so some people become very hyper focused on the sort of we could say decorative, so they're not necessarily fake, but they're not necessarily important, decorative elements of each sort of you could think of them as a stage. Each thing is a stage, 12 stages, just like they had in northern Italy right before the Renaissance. They would do those tarot plays where they would kind of like, stage the sort of sephora, you could say, uh, on these carts, on these kinds of trains. So just because someone buys like a vase from like this ancient place doesn't necessarily mean that in the greater working that they have some kind of direct lineage to, I don't know, I'm sorry, Matt, like whatever town. But maybe they chose it for a reason. No, I mean like maybe the magician who decides like the composition of the play, the director. That's the magical operator, right? Is basically the director. So if you're deciding it, you're choosing, okay, so I'm going to choose this vase on purpose. But maybe my connection to this town is nebulous, but I chose this vase because uh, a rich family owned it. Maybe it was a very particular family. Maybe it's a very particular color. Maybe it's a very particular shape. Maybe there are religious iconographical sort of motifs around it that make it very important. So then what is the origin of the vase? Is it this is it from the director? Is this the person who placed it? That's very parafiction, right? You're placing an object into reality for metaphysical purposes. That's all really parafiction is, and I'm arguing that's all parapolitics is. You're aligning things in a specific way, a specific directionality, a specific polarity to accord with your quote unquote will. But the meta politics is kind of the bigger backdrop, the more important. Like, what does this all mean in, as Solar said, a grammar, like a ritual language? Okay, so that's my point about that. I don't know if that, maybe I meandered. I apologize. Okay, Matt, I'm sorry. Please go ahead.
Well, that was very nice. It made me remember about the archaeometer as well, where they actually in the beginning of the book touch a little bit upon these things, like about not only the underground cities. I think in the book they call Shambhala or whatever, but there's many names, right? And they are not necessarily the same, but you get the idea. They also mentioned this idea that the true Greeks were Balkan Slavs and the true Italians were Slavic Celts. So again, very speculative. Okay, go read the book so you can understand their reasoning. But it is very interesting that people will claim, "Oh, I am native from that place or this place." Okay, but think about it. What makes you native? Because if you eventually had to move, let's say, to there, so you would have to know the full story, right? Because if you just know, "Oh, I went there and people were there," doesn't make them necessarily native. Like, what if they moved yesterday there? Like, so you get the idea. So, and if in Europe in general people were moving around quite a lot, how can you pinpoint exactly what is, for example, an Italian? So I can say people from the south of Italy, they don't see themselves as Italians even nowadays. Like in today's age, sure, they'll have in their passport, it will be written Italian. But if you ask them, they will say like, I am from, let's say, Napoli. I am from Calabria or whatever, right? Whatever region they are from. Which again makes you wonder, how can you be so sure about the archaeology and what the things meant and so on? Because it could be that we are digging stuff, let's say in Egypt, and you think, oh, the Egyptians had this, this, and that. But it could be also that the Egyptians got there and stuff was just there and they kept using it. And it is actually much older. Like it was not necessarily them creating or using it the best way and so on and so forth. They could be changing how the stuff is used. Or even think about this scenario. Say you have a journal, okay? And it's your journal. You don't expect other people to read it. So you just write however you want and of whatever you like with however many words and how you want to place them and so on and so on. Because it's something for you. So it makes sense for you. Say in 100 times, in 100 years time or more, people find that journal. It's going to be probably gibberish for them, but they'll try to make sense with their own point of view. I think that's what came to mind when Jin was talking about. So, for example, you have that vase, right? So the vase will mean something for you, but it didn't mean the same thing for that other person. So again, it is, and you can even broaden that idea to the fact that every thing that you interact with, let's say a product you buy or a person you start, some kind of relationship with in any sense, like friendship or whatever, or family even, or even what we're doing here, okay? Like the way you project yourself. You are never, for example, you're never buying something for what the thing is. You're buying the projection that you have upon that thing. So let's say the emotions that you have whenever you have the thing, the story that you are telling yourself when you're buying the thing. So in the same way, when you subscribe to a certain archaeology story, you're not doing it for what it is because you don't even know what it is. You just only have some output from the idea of subscribing to it. Let's say, you think, for example, people LARP as like Aryans or whatever, right? And they'll think, oh yeah, I'm from this lineage or whatever. Or people will say, oh yeah, actually my civilization was super advanced, whatever it was called, the bullshit, whatever name you want to do it. And then again, they're not interested in the actual story, but rather what the story produces to them from their point of view. Okay. And that is very magical. I'm not saying it's wrong, but it's magical. It's how it works. Okay. So if you understand that, then you can also understand how do you parse the stories that you are seeing, and how can you make those better so that you get more of the reality that you are looking to. So again, the Archimedes is a very, very interesting book because I said that crazy thing, right, about the Greeks and box, but that's like 1% of the book. The whole other part is much nicer.
But this is really interesting, Matt. This is fundamentally interesting what you're talking about. It's like all of these are just competing magical ideas, magical theories on the nature of reality. Just like NASA. When people criticize NASA, especially from the conspiracy community, they're somewhat right, but they go in the wrong conclusion. They say space is fake. No, that's not the right conclusion. The right conclusion is we don't know. We fundamentally don't know. We can see phenomena in the universe, existence appearance, as we would call it. We can categorize them in different ways. In mythological terms, in astronomical terms, in deeper, maybe Twilight language terms, maybe Kabbalistic, Sephardic, Tantric terms. There's all these different layers. So which story wins? Well, that's really interesting. And so Sir Tim asked a question. So it's not just me bringing it around to the series that I'm super proud of course, Anne of the Daughter. I love saying it even. But Sir Tim did ask me, is there an Aeon of the Sun? And Sir Tim, it is not a dumb question. This came up many times in the series. Of course, there was an Aeon of the Sun. There are 4 turnings of the wheel. Well, there are more turnings of the wheel than that, but there are 4 positions, you could say, on the square. So there are 4 positions. It's divided. It's a quaternary sort of turn, and so the idea of the Aeon of the Sun is he is to rectify the Father, but in the Puranic terms, Ram will know the story really well. He doesn't actually give the left-handed practices to humanity. So he kind of goes against the grain of both the father and the mother. It's a long, complicated turn, but you could say this figure is also very Christ-like. And when you look at the Christian Kabbalistic elements, you can see kind of there's a lot of dualism. This like very strong polarity of like. Christ is like this kind of abyssal cork. This guy who holds like the darkness in, or is he like arisen into like this new life? Like, what does it all mean? Is it a hyperspace kingdom? Is it like Book of Enoch shit? Is it like there's all these different ways to even describe just that simple, well, quote unquote simple resurrection story even. So that is the Aeon of the Sun though, and it was supposed to be a kind of Tipheratic proliferation. Maybe that's an interesting way to think about it. A sort of redemptive arc, because the sun is often described as rebellious. Like Matt brought up the Enki and Enlil sort of parallel, and this is a very Zoroastrian. Like we're using the Sumerian names, and that is also why it's so interesting. The Enki and Enlil, I could just say Shiva and Vishnu. It's almost the same story, the Puranic story. People have no idea how closely these things are interrelated. I'm not saying for any of you, but I'm just saying, like, even more broadly, like on, like a lot of the Indian Twitter hates me, which is fine. I welcome that. But the truth is that they don't even read their own stories. So, who are they to correct me? Like, I come from a place of like, I'm a Buddhist, but I can recognize the Aeon of the Sun. Like, I don't reject any of the Aeons. Like, I can reconcile the Father, the Mother, the Son, and the Daughter, and me, the witness. And if you're wondering, like, what even the fuck I'm talking about with all this, just go watch The Fifth Element, and it explains everything. The idea of the Aeon of the Daughter really is that they are in synthesis together. She redeems the Sun through the heatless flame. She kind of takes some of the burden away from him, you could say. If you've ever seen me post the image, it's that she has the bow and arrow. And so you could say she's the constrictive Gevuratic element, especially in terms of Christ. He has a very Hasidic kind of, he's the guru. He's the Rabbi Christ. That's from Hesed. So he's the perfect teacher, but the perfect teacher really arises at Tiferet. So you could say the Aeon of the Daughter is also the Aeon of the Sun. And I even argued this. And I think in Kabbalistic terms, you can make it a really strong argument that that's true. But I think that it's different because she is hidden. I think Ram even said this in the chat. She's kind of a hidden figure. She's going to be for the cool kids. It's very Temple of Psychic Youth shit. It's like, yeah, the cool kids know. But they're not, we're not anti. We're not going to be like, yo, like, we're not picketing the Christians or, starting fights with them on Twitter. I mean, guilty sometimes, but most of the time I'm pretty good. So that's the truth is like, we're cool with it because it's part of the Aeon and we recognize in him. It's not necessarily what we believe that mythology particularly, excuse me, but it's Nuria, Seth, and Zoe. Those are the Aeons. If you want to really like pare it down to everything that I'm saying is like just bullshit, whatever. It's the three ideas. It's Nuria is love, Zoe is life force, and Seth is the adamantine will. That Vajra, that pristine consciousness that exists in the arc. And I'm really sorry, Joseph. Please go ahead.
It's totally fine. You don't have to apologize. Referring to what you were saying prior about the competing ideas, which one will win. Well, if it's a Leela, right? Who wins a play? Right? If it's a play, who wins? Who wins a symphony? Who is the winner of a symphony? It's not, there's no, now, like, there could be a war in the play, right? And like, that's what gets you like totally, involved in it and keeps you like, oh my God, I have to watch the next episode and I got to keep going and doing it. But like, it's at the end, it's just a play, right? There's no race. You don't race to the end of a symphony and who's the winner of the symphony. So there are competing ideas, and I'm reminded of the word competition means to strive together, right? So again, and I know that I've said this before, I think we're going to is that we will be able to perceive multi-layered, multi-dimensional. I think there's many, many things happening at the very same time, and they're all valid, and we will be able to diaphanously see through them and say, oh yeah, it's everything happening simultaneously at the same time. That's it.
That was amazing. Thank you, Joseph. Yeah, I'm going to let you go, Matt. I'm going to say, though, that, one of the ideas of the Aeon of the Daughter, this is not from me particularly, but I also agree with the idea, is it is the Aeon of Ipsos. Sort of like, it's very Vajra-like, actually, when the way I'm saying it, in contrast to what Joseph originally said about Vajra and what Mike said as well. But it kind of comes around. It's dialectical. It's the magician's figure eight. It's the infinity loop, right? So, anyways, I'm going to let Matt go. I'm sorry. I lost my train of thought. But there was something there. I think there is an interesting thing I was going to say. I apologize. Okay, Matt, please go ahead.
No worries, Jin. I'm sure you're going to remember it. I just want to touch on the ideas that Joseph brought on about things happening, like multiple things, layered things happening at the same time, right? So it is funny to see that. I think I can recall maybe 5 years from now or something that we started seeing more and more of TV series and movies and stories that would touch on this, like in the normie view, right? So obviously those stories happen or existed for such a long time, like stories with multiverses and so on. But it seems to me like around 5 years, maybe a little bit more, it started to really be pushed forward in like the normie, I don't know, like Marvel movies, like Netflix TV series and whatever. So everyone started to get a feeling, and when that's happening, you can be sure that it is like they're preparing the grounds, you can say. Like because you cannot, like, you need some level of abstraction to understand, but it actually can be quite easy if you look at your own life. So for example, you will have your day-to-day, let's say, work life, and then you're gonna have your relationships going on, like many of them with friends, romantic partners, whatever, your family, and so on, so on, so on. You're gonna have your own mental, like, ramblings and things going on. So you already have all of those things, right? And they are already layered. In regards to multiverses, well, that requires you to think about them, to imagine them. So you could imagine, what if I took a different decision? Where would I end up to? Or you could think, oh, where will I be in X amount of years, given I'm in this path? Or what if that and that thing wouldn't have happened? Like, where would I be now? And the thing is, all of those exist, but you are subscribing to the reality that you are right now. So it's kind of like Joseph gave a very nice example. So it's like a play or a game or whatever, right? A movie, whatever. And you opened one of them and you're watching it. If you don't like it, okay, there are ways to change it. Okay, like look back, you're gonna see, okay, there's a projector there. You can actually change the movie. But before you go into that, you got to actually realize it is a play, it is a game, a movie, an app, whatever it is, right? The name you want to give it. So if you don't realize that, then you're going to be stuck in the character's point of view, and in a way that makes the thing more fun, right? Because after you realize it's a play, if you realize it at the wrong time, maybe you don't quite understand it, as in, then you think, so it's just a play anyway, and fuck this shit, I'm gonna do something else. No, it doesn't work like that. You subscribe for the play. Now you gotta play it. That's the thing. It's not the ride started. You're in the roller coaster. You cannot just jump out. You're gonna finish the ride, and you cannot skip to the end, like Joseph said, and I completely agree. So the best you can do maybe is like change rides, but you're still riding it. So it's again, if you want to tie it back to archaeology in the sense, so it is very important, the one that you choose to subscribe to and to give your attention in a micro level as well, like I was saying, the ancestral part, like your family, because it's so crazy. I had this last time I was in Brazil, I was in a conversation and my grandma was talking to someone about how I came to Europe, for example, the story of how I came to Europe, and she butchered the story completely. Obviously, like, it's my grandma. I'm not gonna correct her or whatever, but it is very funny to see because now she told a story to someone else about how reality happened, which is quote unquote fake. It is like not what I've been through, but also I understand that um, then other people that maybe even had the same story with me, like other people that participated in that story with me, will see the whole story differently. So again, you have competing stories at a very micro level. Now imagine this at a macro level, like at a whole, like the conception of a country, the conception of, multiple eras and so on. So you cannot pinpoint exactly how things are. You have to make up in your mind all of those things. So make sure to choose one that obviously helps you the most, right? Makes you evolve. I would say that's personally, that's the most important thing from my point of view. Is like, if you can keep evolving, doesn't matter. Maybe you're going to go through some hard times, like plays sometimes have drama. You need drama. That's it. Okay. Maybe sometimes you need some anger, whatever. Like all the emotions, all the different characters and plays and scenarios. Just make sure that it helps you evolve and not the opposite, like devolve or like be stuck in the same place.
Okay, thank you so much, Matt. Really appreciate that. You made a great point that William brought up, and you were talking. While you were talking, I was actively listening because I needed to be reminded of the excellent things Joseph said, but also of some of the things that you said. And so I was able to sort of compile, synthesize, maybe, and articulate myself on paper. So this time I cannot. I don't have an excuse to forget. But okay, so three things. We was Kangs. You said this a long time ago, and I'm just doing a Jin riff, so apologies. Uh, this was a great point. This is how all history is written: is we was Kangen. I've said this many times. Every single ethnicity. I know it's really fun to say, yeah, just the Jays, and yeah, they do it too. Everybody does it. Every single ethnicity in this world does it. From the smallest tribal culture to the most advanced civilization. Everybody we was Kangs. Now, there is two kinds of we was Kangs. There are we was Kangin, as in you're doing it in present tense or future tense, perhaps, or we was Kangs, as in past tense. Now, it doesn't matter that much. No, it doesn't. It doesn't. Mormons, they're the best example since we are talking about Hapaboria, obviously. They do the we was Kangen, so they're doing it in the progressive or future or present tense. And they're saying that, yes, we're actually building our sort of compiled works, our Mormon compiled Bible, you could say, as we uncover the archaeology and bloodlines of this both ancient and new world. That's sort of what they think. So that's one way. Or you can be like these. I was thinking that you guys were going to bring up like sacred sites or weird sites in America, and of course you're welcome to do that as well or not. But I actually love the way the space went, so this isn't a criticism of that. But I'm reminded of the Kamesicists in the 1930s, how popular, even in the early 1900s, how popular this kind of magic was. And the problem with Kamesticism at its face value, I'm not talking necessarily about black Kamesticism, but also the sort of ritual, like Golden Dawn's obsessed with it. Astrum, excuse me, I do not have a lisp. My mouth is so dry. Astrum, Argentum, uh, they were all into this we was Egyptian Canaan. And the problem is that the Egyptians, I think Sir Tim brought this up, the Egyptians didn't even really amongst themselves agree on the sort of astro theology of their own pantheon, and nor was their own pantheon fixed. And mythology is not fixed. Everything is re-mythologized at all times. That was a big part of the problem and the splinters with Zoroastrianism in Babylon. That's probably where the tree was derived from, sort of dialectically analyzing the religious text. You're not supposed to do that. That was actually like against the rules in Zoroastrianism. You're never supposed to assign God into a negative quality, a klipa. God's ineffable. It's beyond the beyond, Diamond Thunder. Once you start to put a concept around God, yeah, it can contain a spark. This is like Matt will agree with me. This is exactly like what Kabbalah is. You're containing a spark of splendor of God. Some sparks have more potential, more luminosity, more brilliance. But really, the quality of God is quality less. Adamantine. Something to think about. Okay, We Was Kangs. So I'm not in favor of either We Was Kangs or We Was Kangin. So let me just say that. But I am in favor of We Are the Builders, because they left the world in ruins, you could say. I'm not saying in material terms inherently, but in a speculative way, I think it's fair to say that I'm not blaming any generation either. Like, yes, I'll say, like, yeah, boomers and Gen X are savages, like, you know, off to the Eskimo ice floe with them. Okay, we won't say that. But what I mean is, there are generational differences, but I do think it's greatly exasperated on social media, and I think that's also part of like identity politics that doesn't get spoken of. These kinds of age categories. So I know I do this, and I self-refer as a millennial all the time. So, but I think that a lot of that is we was Kangin too. I think, like, how do we measure these kinds of generational times? Through technology often, right? A lot of us, especially like the millennial bros, do think of it in terms of video games. That is how I often sort of understand Zoomers. I kind of like, in my mind, I'm like, okay, what system away was I born? And so I think that's how we relate to each other, but I also think that that's fake, because we can also just relate to each other as human beings. So I know that's turned a little more touchy-feely than I usually am, but I said I'm in the mood, so there you go. Okay, so I have to quote Frater Rom. So I'm sorry, this is gonna be a little bit long one, but this is gonna be a Frater Rom quotation. So he actually said this, so I cannot take credit for it, but I have to say that in my mind, I was thinking it exactly as he said it. So if this is like not the proof of Ipsos, I don't know what it is. So this is what I sort of forgot I was saying about what Joseph said. So the idea is from primordial chaos into Ipsos, right? Like, do we? But then there's a question. There's even a question in the translation of Ipsos. What does it mean? So during the mop working, she said that it was the mass, but Rom suggested that it was actually ipsos in individuation, his exact words. And when I went to look up the Greek, there's actually that concept embedded within it as well. So I think that actually describes what Joseph said. We originated from this mass consciousness. Sounds very Marxist in a way, doesn't it? It does. I'm just saying. I'm not a Marxist, and nor do I want to be, but I'm just saying there is a Kabbalistic element, obviously, in Hegel, a deep one. I mean, Hegel is Kabbalah, so it kind of goes without saying. But yeah, we originated at this low consciousness. Is a very Buddhist way to describe it. A low sort of Preta Bhuta Vitali realm, carnal ground consciousness, you could say. The primordial stew, and then we sort of progressed, and we arose in technology, but did we arise in consciousness? And I think that that is a big part of the Ipsos right now, is that we see all cultures, all peoples of the world, and we were originally told you cannot judge them, and But our traditional way of thinking was like, yeah, the West is superior because we have these technological, cultural amenities and practices, and so we, have a bit better public social behaviors. And to a degree, I think that most of us recognize that there is something positive about a lot of Western cultural norms. It certainly is a surprise to even hear me say that. Like, I mean, in terms of coming out of my mouth, because that's not how I felt for a long time. So it's a shift. It's a shift in consciousness. And maybe the real progressive way is not that we are demographics or voting blocks or identities but we're just fellow people, we're all humans here right now, as we always said for Hyperborea, right? I tried hard to be post-racial and suggest that perhaps it was. That doesn't mean, and I always say, like, the kingdom is in your own conceptual borders. Like, do you consider the world borderless? Do you consider yourself borderless? Do you consider yourself transgressive? Do you consider yourself, progressive? It all matters. And so you'll project sort of the kingdom outwards as well. Maybe not in individuation, but in mass. So maybe the most powerful thing is that actually we take it all back into individuation. And then I'm going to use a really psychotherapeutic kind of, it's going to sound really like that, but I think that all that stuff's bullshit. I'm just being honest. That's my opinion. You can believe whatever you want. I I just feel like Thurgy is the way. I've said this so many times. It's not really news from me, but I do think that the higher practices are there for, that's the purpose of our individuation, if you want to say that. So, like, grow in consciousness with each other. So it is both the tide to rise all boats in a way, but then you also have to be a little rebellious, be a little flexible, and say, like, not everybody's going to be down. That's the reality. People are going to watch Netflix slop. People are going to be into the pop stars. And this goes into my third thing. And then, yes, Matt can go. Something that Matt and Joseph said, but particularly Joseph. Who is the winner of the Leela? The stars. The stars are the winner of the Leela. The people that you select as primary importance. They are the vehicles for the narrative. The vessels, even, you could say. The klipa. And how do you rectify the klipa of a star? Self-combustion, of course. Self-combust the desire and self-combust the word. I don't know. I always found that very profound. But yes, Matt, please go ahead.
Amazing example with the star, and I completely agree. Like, they used to say that Zeus would grab the best, like, heroes and animals and whatever he felt like had importance, and he would create the constellations out of them. So, like, he would basically honor them, right? Putting them as stars. And then you have nowadays, musical stars or actors stars and so on and so on, how we name them. So I wouldn't say they're probably more cliffs of stars than actual stars. But anyways, it is indeed even one of the arcana, right? The 17th arcana, at least in the count I use. So the path between Netzach to Hod. So it's the Pe letter. The same idea. You have what makes like your spiritual purpose here. So it is indeed something you should be always striving for, because it is what will count at the end of the play. Not, it's probably not going to be on the end screen of the game. When the leaderboard comes up, you're not going to be like seeing how many times or like how much money you made or how many times you got out with a specific person or whatever. It's going to be, did you complete the purpose you had when you joined? That's it. Like you have a purpose here that you chose, which is not fixed. Again, it's not fixed. You didn't choose a ride and you have to stick with the exact same ride until the end, but you have to complete a ride. Okay. And how exactly you're going to do it, again, depends on you. You just have an overall overarching goal, purpose that you came to do, which would be then well, the second point that I want to connect with that Jin mentioned slightly about the races, right? So if we understand that we are not the body, so the body is the character we are playing. Okay, the character has a race, a DNA, yada yada, etc. But the way it uses that, the way we use that body, okay, the way we play the character is irregardless of the character itself. Like the software you run on the hardware, like one doesn't have to do with the other. Okay, so in the same way, some people will try to be super literal about this concept of even like root races, for example. Theosophists will talk about, which doesn't mean that it's literally a group of people from the same race, and then like you have the 7 or something, and then it evolves to another group of people of a different race and so on. Even because if you think about it, the logistics, like how many races do we even have cataloged, right? As humans, it's like what does differentiate one from the other and so on. So if you want to really start going to that, you're definitely going to have many more than we think. And then how, again, this actually impacts things is not that much, because it's just the vehicle through which your consciousness goes about life. So when I hear something like root race, I'm not thinking like a specific body, but rather a specific consciousness. So the next root race, right? To me, it would come from the mix of the best of all the past races. It's like a constant evolution, right? So you would have people they would get the best from the, let's say, the first, second, and so on, so on, so on, and they would merge into a new one, and that keeps going forever and ever and ever and ever, right? Or how many cycles you want to do it numerologically. But again, don't take things literally. It's not a literal, even when people talk about like Atlantis or Lemuria, Hyperborea, like the Adamics, pre-Adamics, whatever, how many of those you want to name, don't take those literal, because you don't know. They might as well not even be from this simulator. So you're like trying to tell a story which it's far, far, far from here, and you won't have the context unless you go there and actually see with your own spiritual eyes. And even if you do, it's not going to change much. So don't try not focusing on that, going that crazy route, because it's probably going to take much more energy than without giving you things back, basically. So focus on what you can focus on.
So I agree with you, Matt. The root races for me, I just take that in like an allegorical way, like a deeper, maybe I would consider it deeper. I find the outer theosophical or anthroposophical presentation of that just a little. It just goes a little facile for me. So I like it more conceptually, maybe more alchemically, maybe states of consciousness, flux, because our consciousness is really flux, right? It's like the spark of Hode. It's kind of like where our consciousness really starts. That like exploratory, inquisitive, analytical mind. And so that brings up something else interesting that Matt even said, and I don't know if Matt was sneaking a little Kabbalah, maybe, perhaps, into it, but he said to expand the line infinitely. Well, that's really interesting compared to Hode, right? Because what is the Sephira that expands infinitely? Well, it's Hesed. It's loving kindness. It's really interesting. And but really the heart of Hesed is, as it is often said, especially by Ramak, he said the heart of Hesed is the spark of Hode. So it's sort of like we bring the analytical mind and we realize like, yeah, we can see and maybe categorize the whole universe as a very Luciferian, you could say. But does it all matter? And I think that Kabbalistically, you'd have to say at Hesed, it doesn't really all matter. It's kind of more what Matt said. It's kind of like this messy, maybe fucked up sort of, not that synthesis should be fucked up, but maybe that's what like the experiment of humanity is like a messy, fucked up project. And it is kind of like the 5 root races, the 5 natures, the 5 alchemical colors. And I know you're going to say, there's really only 3 or there's really only 4. Well, different systems have different preferences. And because Matt and I both like the Pardes system, the 5 density system, and also it's also Rosicrucian, right? 5 petaled rose. And it's also a Buddhist number, if you think of the 5 cosmic Buddhas, right? So it makes sense. I think it's a good way to understand. I don't think it's the only way, but I think it's a good way. So with all that being said, I think that you could say that perhaps the sort of expansion of Ipsos from chaos into sort of like this identitarian thing that they tried to do, because that really wasn't the norm. Like I know like John and Joseph are slightly older than me. They'll confirm this was not the norm to think in like this very, that is really the mind poison, you could say, of identity politics. It pushed us into very cattle-like conditions, like very, we are just our voting bloc. That's all. We are just our political identity. But all politics is bullshit. So it's a little scary if people think that politics is their identity, right? And I also think that was a big trap for like people on the quote unquote dissident right. Because they're really just an extension of dirtbag leftists, right? Brooklyn, specifically, dirtbag leftists. That's a kind of an idea, at least. I think, like, the dime square idea, I think, yeah, it's all trajectory. And so they fell into the same pattern of the left, because obviously they are kind of leftists in their, maybe orientation. And as I've argued, I think millennials are the most leftist in their orientation, the most pagan of all the generations. And the Zoomers kind of corrected, and hopefully Gen Alpha will correct more. I think that is probably a positive. But I think in our wildness, we kind of bring speculativeness. We bring the ability to be, we're chaos magicians in the true sense of the word, because we were like, fuck everything that came before. We're just going to do something new, but we're also going to remix it, but we don't really fucking care what the old meaning is. We're just going to discard everything, but consume everything at the same time. It's very dualistic, but it kind of worked for us, made us fucked up probably. But I think that there's an idea though, is that it's like so when Gen Alpha is like entering their mid-30s, there'll be 2 more generations already. You could say that that's already 2 aeons. That's one way to think about it. It can if you're comparing it to kind of an earthly or worldly cycle. But you could also think of it in your own consciousness. So I think that is kind of interesting. There's an idea in Kalachakra Tantra that you want to bring everybody into the same world clock. It's a big idea, a big like soteriological goal. You want to bring everybody into the same sort of space of we're all moving in the same direction, whatever direction that is. Obviously, I say the direction's non-dual, so it doesn't really matter. So you just have to be quicksilver surfers regardless. I think that's a good way to be. Not the only way, but a good way. And basically that. I mean, I just think that talking about it puts us all sort of in the same wheel turning. And like also transcending space and time to come on, an app called X in spaces together in consensus and in perception. Yeah, that obviously we always say like they're plus ultra spaces, like they're magic. So I don't know if that was even a good outro, but I think it was a really awesome space. We'll go 4 more minutes. I really appreciated that Joseph and Mike also, of course, came up. Mike, you did a great job. Joseph's kind of, I mean, I love Joseph, but like he's been here before. I can't, he knows that I'm into it. But no, thank you, Mike, so much for coming. I probably didn't know what you were going to get too much, but I think we did a good job, and I think it was really interesting. I think it's exactly where I wanted to go. I know if Joshua was here as a co-host, he would have definitely taken us more into material sciences, and I think that is also interesting. And because I think it's the synthesis of all of it. Like, it doesn't have to be to the exclusion. You can be interested in like some of the shit Randall Carlson says. Just because I don't necessarily agree 100% with him doesn't mean he doesn't say interesting things. Doesn't mean he can't say true things. Sure. Same with Graham Hancock. There's a lot I have criticism of Graham Hancock. One of them is his focus on this very, very ancient, archaic history when there is forgotten history from the last 1,000 years right now. For me, I think that perhaps I'm the most interested in that is like, what is our recent, our mappable, our trackable, our real discernible, are not our we was Kang history, but maybe there are like narratives that we don't even really know and haven't explored. And also, we get to choose now, like the narratives we make. So I want to reference our brother from the lodge, Brother Dingbat, because he was, this is kind of something that we joke about, and I suspect in my own speculatively way that perhaps they do consider it true, but they can speak for themselves, and I'm talking about Solar and him. There's a series, a fantasy series, or a kind of like a blue collar sci-fi series, I think. And the truckers are the descendants of Templars, and the roads attract all these denizens of the carnal ground: vampires, witches, sickos, serial killers, etc., etc. And as the descendants of the Templars, the truckers have to go and deal with these menaces as quietly as possible. So part of me, at least partly, I want to believe it's true, as a speculative descendant of, they, as they say, were descendants of the, Mary Magdalene. That's often what French Canadians think of themselves. So it's interesting. So I'd like to think I'm a Templar as well. And so in that spirit, I just think that whether that's true or not true, it doesn't really matter. But it is an interesting as an idea. And maybe that is kind of the story of America. And like we talk a lot about this, like, yeah, Aeon of the Sun, Sir Tim, is very Hode maxing. It's very Crowley. It's very Aeon of Horus. And Crowley said that the Aeon of the Sun arises at Gevra. And I said the Aeon of the Daughter arises on Path 22, which is actually in between Gevra and Tiferet. And actually would say that the Sun arises on the opposing path between Hesed and Tiferet. And maybe that's also, this is something Allison brought up, and it's not really something I had thought deeply about. Like, I probably had speculated on it, but like, is the Aeon of the Daughter a Sisgi, a twin? And I would say no, it's a complement, but could it be interpreted as that? Yes. Because they don't necessarily have to be together. Like, yes, I like the Mary Magdalene and Jesus iconography. I think it's really cool. Obviously, I am a Buddhist, so I do think that Yab-Yum is the reality, but I also understand that in a different way. It doesn't necessarily have to be Yab-Yum for me. It's just a completion of that sort of the synthesis of the deity. It's sort of like the wholeness of the idea of emptiness and love together. That's really what the whole thing is, and love in the higher conceptual value. So I don't know. Did that even make sense? I don't know. But anyways, I'm gonna let my co-hosts tonight introduce themselves, or not introduce themselves, close out themselves. But I'm gonna do lodge shout outs, and then I will say 2 more words, and then we'll end it. But just let me say thank you to everybody for coming. Grey Lodge Productions presents. I don't know. But yeah, I think we did a great job. I love doing the spaces. I hope you guys will give me more ideas. and be open to also my own craziness. But for now, we're drawing from the masses. We're truly drawing from Ipsos. So I don't know. At least in our little weird, speculative corner of Twitter. So that's all of us that are so different, but yet all attracted to the same thing, the truth. So thank you guys, everybody. Avi, Sir Tim, Zachary, Shumar, love you, bud. Rom, you're so naughty lately. Bibliomancer, I'm sorry I didn't read your quote. I retweeted part of it. Thank you so much for coming. Really appreciate you. We are in the true, if you are on Twitter, you practice necromancy. This is the true cardinal ground of reality in the truest way. Ketu maxing all the way. We are like ghosts among the ghosts on the cardinal ground, like for real. As Joseph said, we're the disembodied spirits. That's what we are. It's Ketu. It's like you can't even describe it any better than that. It's a smoke that's not substantiated. I mean, software, that's what software is. So very interesting. Mookie, of course, thank you so much. I hope you didn't fall asleep too much. Thank you so much for coming. And Robin, thank you so much for coming. Really appreciate it. Glad to see you. I don't know if we're mutuals, but it's great to welcome anyone who wants to come. Bulbray Free, Avi, thank you so much. Did I say everybody? Oh, Matt Murrah, love you, buddy. Mike, thank you so much for coming. Joseph, thank you so much for coming. And John, thank you so much for coming. And everybody did a great job. Shout out Brother Solar. Shout out Brother The Branch and all of their projects and great work and amazing contributions from Solar tonight, but from all of you as well. So uh, know that I super appreciate it. I actually look forward to coming, which is different for me. I'm not really. I'm more of a loner by nature. I'm kind of the anti-Ipsos, the true John Bircher libertarian of esoteric Twitter, you could say maybe. But yeah. So to be in synthesis with all of you and to want to is a different sensation, just as it is being friends with so many of you at the same time is a challenge at times, but not because you're challenging, probably because I'm challenging. And I have to kind of balance how challenging I decide to be. And so I think that that's a great blessing. And to be part of that and to sort of have to be very aware of your own behaviors, knowing that you say life is your great work. Not the behaviors in that I would act so like bad or anything, but I think I'd let myself be a little more mercurial, and I think that I actually don't intend to hurt people's feelings most of the time. And if I do, you'll know. I think that's a better place to be, pointed rather than broadly cutting. So I aspire to that. Anyways, okay, Matt, please go ahead. Mike, and then Joseph. Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much, everyone listening. Obviously, Jin as well for hosting, all the other co-hosts. So Solar, Mike, Joseph, the other guy who I sadly forgot his name, but he joined for a little bit, and John for speaking in the space. So the spaceman speaking in space. That was very nice. Do it more often. That was the Grey Lodge. So I'm at Mora. Kabbalah, Tarot, astrology, neurology, all the things you need. Just hit me up and trying to merge some tech with all of those crazy things. And by the way, coming back to making videos. So not only you have the podcasts to listen to, so Jin podcasts, which he said is coming up. So be aware, follow along. But also I'm going to be posting some videos as well, because very interestingly, I was talking to the guy from my job yesterday, the guy who does the payments and so on. It's not the CFO, but something like that. And he said, bro, I look to your videos and so on, I watch them, but it feels like I'm stupid that I cannot understand them and so on. But I really like them. And I said, okay, bro, I'm going to make more videos. I'm going to try to make them easier to digest, because with if I use all the Kabbalah names, it can get very complex, but it isn't actually. Everything's so easy. Like we just spoke today on almost 3 hours here. It is actually very straightforward. So we just need the correct analogy for you. And that's it. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, 100%. You just need the right analogy for the right person. The skillful means to help them penetrate at least the first density of awareness. 100%. That's why I like anime. I think that's why everybody else likes anime too. When you discuss, because everybody's familiar with it in a way, or video games, or as I did with Eric, the animated, like the American animated films. So, anyways, I'll let you guys go. Mike, please plug anything you want to plug. Thank you so much for coming, and then I'm gonna let Joseph. I'll plug for John.
Okay, I'm going to keep mine short and sweet. I really appreciate you inviting me. I had a great time. It was really fun. I don't have anything to plug, but I followed many of you guys, and I just look forward to connecting with you guys and seeing where all this goes. Thank you again. It was awesome.
Yeah, it really was really fun. I really like this tonight's space, and but I actually think you guys have done really great the last like 5 or 6, maybe all of them. Maybe I really liked most of Aetherpunk. I liked all of Aetherpunk and most of Welcome to Hyperborea, so that's pretty great. Okay, Joseph, please go ahead.
Thank you, Jin, for hosting. Thank you, Matt and Solar and Mike and John, who's disappeared, and Jay, who spoke earlier. I'm looking forward to exploring this stuff more. Thank you so much.
Okay, so let me just say for John, if you are interested, go to Space Answered, John, for Astro Services. And he could really use, like, if you have $1 or $2 and you like his Astro advice, please, if you can, don't do it if you can't, but if you can, please. He'd appreciate that. I appreciate that. Okay, so I'm Jin the Ninja. I host a show called Threshold Saints. Yes, Matt's episode is definitely coming up. It's in the next 3. I know I didn't release one this week. I really apologize. I was kind of busy, and then I got asked to do some lives, which many of you came to. That's really, I honestly, it is kind of fun. It is kind of fun to go on YouTube, and then people be like, say nice things about, I'm very easily flattered if you say I'm smart, so the way to my heart is really, that is how to do it. So I'm easy like that. So yeah, it's great. It's really fun. I love seeing you guys, but you don't feel like anyone needs to come or anything or retweet my appearances. It's just, but it is great. It really does make me, I know I shouldn't base anything on that, but it is cool. It's weird. It's different for me. So but I appreciate it nonetheless. It's obviously conversations with you all. That's why I bring people from the lodge on my show, because I think that being in discussions and synthesis, in actual dialogue, not just me speaking, maybe with you in perception for like an hour or 2 hours, but also in dialogue, I think that's where the magic arises. That's where like you can set the dragon free, and as I always say, and like the discourse is magic. That's the truth. It's like us bringing the ideas, whether they are whether they can be synthesized, reconciled, rectified, amended, or they can't. Maybe the polarities just can't be redeemed by you, but that's okay. At least you can have it. Sometimes that makes for really interesting conversation, is disagreement. And we did say one of the aeonic keywords is no. So I think this even goes along with something that Joseph and I think about a lot. Like, the one thing about the left is like you can't say no. And the one thing about the right is you always have to say yes. And so I feel like why can't we just make up your mind in context? I think this is like nuance, bro. Like, it just is that simple. It's like, what do you want to do? What is your will? I'm not saying your will is right. I don't think that. I think it's love over will. That's what I think is the aeon. But I think it can also be understood as love and will. So I think that if you don't know what that is, then you better go find that. And I'm not saying for any of you in the lodge, but I think for the most part, it's like it's so important, and there's a reason why it's so emphasized in modern magic. It's not the everything. You shouldn't want to be the beast. You should want to conquer the beast. But I do think the beast is cool. I like the dragon, obviously. But I also think like you want to kind of go beyond that. And we should all want to go beyond that because that's like what the Aeon is. Like whether you're more Telemite and you think, okay, Aeon of the Sun, we're maxing. But really, Crowley, even in his own admission, he based a lot of the Aeon of the Sun thing on Christ. And on theosophy and on like his own ideas. And you know, whether that's right or not, or whether my understanding of it is perfect, I think Christ is a cleaner Kabbalistic example, and I think there's a lot of reasons why that is. So I think that what do we learn from it? Love and will. So we have to like make our hearts like pristine, but also like adamantine, resilient, in flux, quicksilver surfers, rock and roll, rebellious, but not destructive. So with all that being said, I think, did I let you go, Joseph? I can't even remember. I'm so sorry.
You did. It's all good. Thank you.
I did?
Yes.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure. I've done this before, so it's okay. But yeah, so I appreciate that. With all that being said, in synthesis, you have to let things be in love and emptiness. Most important. I think number one. Non-dual. Be chill. As chill as you can be, but still have the ability to say no. Because that's that's the most powerful. Really rhetorically, magically, still has a lot of power. Maybe maybe in a month it'll be a different word, but I think it's a cool word to say no in a current climate where nobody really agrees. Because you can actually be like, I don't agree with any of you, like fuck all of you. I'm not saying to any of you. I'm saying just for the normie opinions, you can just be like, it doesn't mean that you disagree with all of them. But it's like with what Monty was talking about. Like, does it drag on you? Like, I think that's a reason why certain narratives are pushed. And I didn't say this, but I think it's to push you through the carnal ground. I really do. And if you're not prepared for that, it's going to really be super difficult. It's like pushing someone who's like very kind of like, I don't know, like someone who has a little bit of a depressive disorder through the klipas. We've talked about this before, how like a lot of left-hand path people have like very depressive personalities, so they're very attracted to the klipas. That's kind of what the Epstein stuff is. And I'm not saying that's what the whole nature of it is. Could be real, could be not real. I mean, I'm very flexible that way. I'm saying it as I think it is a drag on you, so I think you have to kind of push through it. And if for some people that will be to ignore, and for some people that will be to kind of engage, but you have to engage in like a healthy way. And also not be led. Like if you want to believe something, that is perfectly fine. Reason why. Have a logic why. And that is also what Kabbalah is for. And that is also what selfishly why I led those Kabbalah spaces. And I've admitted it many times on recording and in the spaces. Like I led them so I could just be free and wild. And like, as Matt said, just like use as much Kabbalistic words and language and the spheres as I want. But the truth is also that it is found in pop culture. It is found in reality itself because it is just a map of reality. It's a fundamental way to understand what that is. And that is also what speculative archaeology is about. We know basically that there are architecture, who incorporates Kabbalah, who incorporates these ideas of transcendent reality, this kind of like adamantizing Sethian, you could say, or Neuriatic, or these other figures, Mithraic figures. So we arise in consciousness. And so instead of fighting against it, I think that's a lot of what parapolitical Twitter is like fighting against the inclination, which I think is actually natural and normal, to expand your own consciousness and to like inquire for yourself beyond labels of good and evil. It's not that you are evil. It's not that you are necessarily even good. It's not even about doing things that are evil or good. It's about approaching it without the preconception of what it is. So I think that's an amazing place to end it. Thank you all so much. Appreciate it. It doesn't happen without you. And also, Threshold Saints, yeah, Think, Change, Repeat, Ashley, member of the Lodge. Simon from Brahmastra Metal. So this is for all the millennial metal dudes. Although I did ask him some music questions, so yes, that did happen. But we talked about Project Montauk and sort of like the Rainbow Bridge and its similarities to Tibetan Buddhism. And then also, but maybe the star, perhaps, at least in my own art, Matt Murrah. So Matt's first episode will come out. So look forward to that. But they're all really cool and really good, and I'm proud of all of them. And obviously, Ashley and I have been good friends, and good podcast. She's a great podcasting resource for me. I've met a lot of people through her, so obviously I am also excited for her episode. And we do talk a little about Epstein things, but it was recorded like 2 months ago, so it'll be interesting to hear what I have to say on those topics. But all that being said, I'm Jin the Ninja, Threshold Saints. This was the Grey Lodge, Ruins of Oblivion, Arc 8, the Hapaborean Project, Speculative Archaeologies of a Hyperspace Kingdom. I didn't actually write Hyperspace Kingdom, but we'll pretend I did because it's always there in spirit, right, Zach? Also, Brother Solar and Dr. William Birkin, Joshua the Branch. They also are much beloved people, and yeah. So that's it. And also, psychic self-defense. Be about it, and also be aware that people who you engage with online, Rom, they can send weird juju through the aether wave, right? So that is real. So be aware of it. So everybody, have a great night. Thank you so much. Amazing. Cool. See you guys next week. Peace out.